Chapter 944. Young Lane, House of Marquis. Lisa Xuan held Han Yushi's hand and walked toward the main hall. However, he felt that the atmosphere in the house was a little strange. If he had to describe it, it would be that it was oppressive. The house was not like this in the past. With doubts in his heart, the couple came to the front hall. He saw an old man with a dignified face and a slightly plump figure sitting on the left side of the main hall. The old man was wearing a black robe and a hat similar to a Taoist crown on his head. Next to him sat a kind-looking old lady in her 60s. Mrs. Lee sat below the old lady and was whispering something to the old lady. Below the old man was a middle-aged man in his 40s who wore a Taoist robe. He had a stern face and a stern look on his face. He looked very serious. Old man Lee sat next to the middle-aged man, holding a cup of tea in his hand. His face revealed a trace of an awkward, fawning smile. Below Li Jingma sat a handsome young man in a white robe with his hair tied up. The young man looked to be no more than 12 or 13 years old. From his appearance, he looked very young and inexperienced. At this moment, he was sitting upright on the special armchair of the Marquis estate. His eyes were slightly closed, and his appearance was solemn and dignified. There was a kind of calmness and sage-like aura that did not match his age. Li Zixuan had just stepped into the main hall with Han Yushi when he saw this scene. At the same time, he also felt the oppressive atmosphere in the house. "Father, mother, your son is back." Li Zixuan's expression did not change as he entered the house and shouted to his parents. As for the other people's expressions, he did not have the time to care. She and her humfrued. Mrs. Li got up and was about to greet her son when she heard a cold snort from a seat above. It was the old man. "Your grandfather and grandmother are here. Why don't you greet them first?" Mrs. Li's expression changed as she hurriedly said, "Father, when you came to Chong and Xian was still young. Mother, please sit down." Li Zixuan frowned as if he understood something. He stepped forward and interrupted his mother. Then he looked straight at the old man and said, "So, you are my grandfather. So you're my grandfather. Pardon my rudeness. Grandson left home when he was young and followed master to Mount Longhu to treat his illness. After cultivating for 8 years, there are many things that I don't remember clearly. I hope grandfather won't blame me. After all, I haven't seen you for so many years, and you don't have the label of grandfather on you. Grandson can't possibly call everyone grandfather every time he meets, right?" When the old man heard the first half of Li Zixuan's words, he felt quite comfortable in his heart. However, when he heard the second half, his face suddenly changed, and he said angrily, "How dare you? What an eloquent tongue. J Bamboo. Did you hear that? Is this how you talk to your elders? Is this how you and Li Jingma teach your children? Humph. I've already told you more than 10 years ago that the two of you aren't suited to be together, but you refused to listen. In the end, you gave birth to such an unfilial son who's plagued with misfortune." When Li Jingma heard this, he couldn't help but tighten his grip on his teacup. Madame Li reprimanded her son. "Xian, don't be rude." Then, she hurriedly said to the old man, "Father, Xian doesn't mean any harm. Please don't blame him." The old woman sitting to the right of the old man finally spoke. "Old man, don't be so picky. Let bygones be bygones. Xian has already grown up, and J Bamboo and Jingma are also living happily. Why do you have to bring up the past again?" The old man's face flushed red. He wanted to say something, but in the end, all he could say was a sigh. The old woman looked at Li Zixuan and said lovingly, "Xian, come. Let grandmother take a look at you. I haven't seen you for more than 10 years. I missed you so much." Li Zixuan stopped in his tracks and looked hesitant. Madame Li nudged her son and whispered, "Xian, go. Your grandmother's calling for you." Li Zixuan thought for a moment, then finally walked forward and called out to the old woman, "Grandmother. Hey. Good grandson, come to grandmother's side." The old woman held Li Zixuan's hand, the smile on her face never fading. "The last time grandmother saw you, you weren't even a month old. There was one time when grandmother hugged you, and you even peed on grandmother's body. Haha. It's been almost 15 years since we last met, and in the blink of an eye, you're even taller than grandmother. You're also in the imperial court, and you're valued by the current emperor. Grandmother can even hear news about you from Nanyang. Grandmother only found out that you've returned to Chang and from Mount Longhu when she heard that you've been conferred a title. Thinking that your body has recovered, Grandmother happily ate 3 big bowls of rice that night. After that, I heard that you created some kind of newspaper, so I asked your uncle, Hui Ming, to buy a copy for me every day. There were all kinds of interesting things in the newspaper. Every time I read the newspaper, I would think, is my good grandson happy now? Is he healthy? Is he well? In July, Grandmother heard that Xian had founded an academy and was recruiting students from all over the great Tang Empire. Grandmother originally wanted to send your cousin, Fa Shan, to add to your popularity, but this child's ambitions were not there, so she gave up. Then, Grandmother heard that Xian had been conferred a title of Marquis, and she was so happy. Good child. Sigh. It's all your grandfather's fault. Otherwise, Grandmother wouldn't have worried about you every day and not come to Chang to see you. If you blame Grandmother in your heart, Grandmother will accept it. To be able to see my good grandson today, Grandmother is satisfied. Perhaps it was because she was old that she spoke more than usual. The old woman rambled on for a long time, and by the end of it, her eyes were filled with tears. Beside her, Madame Li was already sobbing. Mother, don't say that. Xiana, it won't blame you, right? Xiana, come here and tell Grandmother. Madame Li held Li Zishuan's other hand and cried. Li Zishuan had never seen his mother like this, and the hostility in his heart dissipated by half. Moreover, the old woman's love for him came from the bottom of her heart, and it touched him. At this moment, he pursed his lips and said, Grandmother, grandson has never blamed you. The sadness on the old woman's face disappeared without a trace, and she revealed a smile that came from the bottom of her heart. She held Li Zishuan's hand tightly and said emotionally, Good grandson, you really are grandmother's good grandson. Xianer, don't blame your grandfather, okay? There were some things that you didn't know back then, but your grandfather did it for your mother's sake. Now that we're finally reunited, let's forget about the past. The old woman sighed and said suddenly. When the old man next to him heard this, he snorted softly. He did not think much of it. Sitting below, Li Jingma's face was a little pale. When Li Zishuan heard this, he secretly thought that there were many secrets that he didn't know. He frowned and asked, Grandmother, what happened back then? Can you tell me? Chapter 945. Ahem. Xianer, come out with me. I have something to tell you. In the main hall, Li Jingma, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly coughed and said. Li Zishuan nodded and was about to move when he heard the old man sitting at the top snort. What can't you say here? If you don't want to say it, I will say it for you. Li Jingma turned around and said helplessly, Father-in-law, it's not that I don't want to move. You don't need to say more. After so many years, your nature of wanting to save face still hasn't changed. Let me say it for you. The old man mercilessly interrupted Li Jingma again. Then he looked at Li Zishuan and said, You were sick when you were young and followed spiritual master Ling Su to Mount Longhu to recuperate. There are many things you don't remember. I don't blame you, but you don't have the right to blame me. Speaking of this, the old man stood up and walked to Li Zishuan's side and continued, I am Yi Guozhong, and this is your uncle, Yi Huiming. The Yi family has cultivated for 4 generations and is also a prominent family in Nanyang. Although I didn't have much opinion about family background, I also hoped that my only pearl could find a good husband to entrust her life to. But I never expected that your father, who is just a traveling merchant and a poor boy, would cheat away my beloved daughter's heart. Being poor is nothing. Although the Yi family is not a wealthy family, we still have some money to spare. As long as your father is someone who is worthy of being entrusted with her life, seeing that both of them are in love with each other, is not a big deal even if this old man marries my daughter to him. But when I first saw your father, I noticed that your father's middle was flat and there was a deep vertical line between his eyebrows. I have cultivated for decades. Although I'm not as good as your master, spiritual master Ling Su, I know that your father's face is the child-killing sword in the study of physiognomy. It's hard for someone with this face to have a son. Even if he does have a son, He won't have a good ending and will most likely die prematurely. At that time, it will be another tragedy of a white-haired person sending off a black-haired person. I only have one daughter, your mother. How can I marry her to someone like your father, who curses children? Even if your father's family is rich and powerful, this old man will never marry my daughter to him. But at that time, your mother was already deeply in love with him and was unable to extricate herself. Even though your grandmother and I tried to stop her, your mother still tried to find a way to secretly meet your father. With no other choice, this old man locked your mother up and arranged another marriage for her. The other party was the son of the Nanyang County chief. He had a dignified appearance and was quite talented. When your mother found out, she resisted with her life. She didn't eat or drink for 6 days and 6 nights. In the end, she fainted in her room. When your father heard the news, he tried to break into the mansion several times, but he was beaten out of the mansion by the servants of this old man. Later, the doctor woke your mother up, but your mother still refused to eat, drink, or take medicine. Seeing that your mother's eyes were gloomy, I was afraid that she was about to die. Your grandmother's heart softened, and she begged me to agree to this marriage. How could this old man agree? But if this old man didn't agree, your mother definitely wouldn't have lived for more than 3 days. In the end, this old man's heart softened. But because of this, your mother was expelled from the family by the elders. This old man was also angry at that time, so I broke off my father-daughter relationship with your mother. We agreed that we would never meet again. But because of this matter, the Yi family also thoroughly offended the local chief. Both sides had constant friction. The Yi family sacrificed a lot of benefits, and their vitality was greatly damaged. However, in exchange for a temporary peace. Fortunately, not long after, Emperor Yang was killed in Jiangdu, and the Great Sui Dynasty collapsed. The heroes of the world rose in revolt, and the Central Plains fell into the flames of war. The chief of Nanyang County died in the hands of a group of bandits. The Yi family accumulated virtue and did good deeds. They built roads and bridges and had a good reputation in the Nanyang area. That was why they were able to survive in this chaotic world and gradually recover. Your mother gave birth to you many years after your father and your mother got married. At that time, your mother remembered that this old man once said that your father was a jinx. She was worried, so she came to Nanyang with your father and asked to see this old man. She wanted this old man to take a look at your face and examine your body. But because your mother and father eloped that year, it brought great losses to the Yi family. Many people in the Yi family hated your mother, and no matter what, they wouldn't let your father and mother take half a step into the Yi family. Later, your grandmother couldn't bear it and secretly went out by herself. She met your mother and you at the inn. After your grandmother returned, she begged this old man again and again, saying that this old man must see you no matter what. This old man couldn't persuade her, so I also went to the inn. But after looking at your face and taking your pulse, this old man only said 2 words, 6 years, and then left. From then on, this old man never saw you, your father, or your mother again. This old man also didn't let your grandmother go to Chang, and because this old man knew that you definitely wouldn't live past 6 years old. Why should I let her go? If she saw too much, when the time came and you died, wouldn't your grandmother be even more sad? Besides, all of this was caused by your father. This old man doesn't want to see him for the rest of his life. Later, I heard that after you grew a little older, you often fell ill and your health deteriorated. Your father and mother began to take you everywhere to find a doctor, but all of this was already predestined. Your illness was congenital. So how could ordinary doctors in the world cure you? The facts prove that this old man wasn't wrong back then. Your father shouldn't have been with your mother at all. But later, even this old man didn't expect that spiritual master Ling Su would take a fancy to you and bring you back to Mount Longhu. But even so, this old man still didn't think that your illness could be cured. So I didn't tell this news to your grandmother. It was better to let her treat you as a dead person, so that she wouldn't be happy about it. But this old man still underestimated spiritual master Ling Su's ability. He could actually help you go against the heavens and change your fate. Now, your face has already. Now, Your physiognomy? At this point, Yi Guozhong subconsciously looked at Li Zixuan's face. With this look, Yi Guozhong's face suddenly changed. There was shock and even more disbelief. Seeing this, Mrs. Li immediately panicked. She walked over and asked anxiously, "Father, what's wrong? Is there something wrong with Xian Er's face?" Li Zixuan also looked at Yi Guozhong curiously. His predecessor had cultivated for 8 years. Although he wasn't very proficient in the 5 Taoist metaphysics, mountain, medicine, fate, physiognomy, and divination, he had dabbled in all of them. As an atheist from the 21st century, Li Zixuan didn't believe in these things at first. But after merging with the memories of his predecessor, he started to believe. A few days ago, Li Zixuan also stared at his face for a long time, but he was interrupted. Now, Yi Chongyang's expression made Li Zixuan curious. "What's wrong with my face? Why does this old man have such a reaction?" Chapter 946. Marquis Mansion, Main Hall. Yi Guozhong was shocked for a long time before he recovered. He shook his head and sighed. "The problem isn't his physiognomy, but that I can't see his physiognomy clearly. Could this be the person of destiny? If this old man came from the modern world, he would definitely scold. Why the F***CK is your face covered in mosaic?" Yes, Li Zixuan's face is indeed covered in mosaic. Ordinary people can't see it, but if a physiognomist looks, they will find that his face is gray, as if he is in a fog, making it difficult for people to see through. Mrs. Li didn't understand and hurriedly asked, "Father, what do you mean? What is the destined person? Is his physiognomy good or bad?" Yi Guozhong looked at Li Zixuan with a complicated expression. He was speechless and said, "The destined one. The destined person is also called the person outside of fate. The person who has this kind of fate is already out of the control of the heavens. In the future, he may conquer the world, intimidate the world, or he may be the enemy of the world and die an unnatural death. In short, it is difficult to predict whether it is good or bad. It is either great luck or great misfortune. It is all up to the destined person to choose." At this moment, the young man who had been sitting quietly on the chair stood up and said as he walked over, "Madam Li and Li Jingma were both stunned. They never expected that this unremarkable little fellow would actually say such words that did not match his age. Li Zixuan was also a little surprised. From a moment he entered the room and saw this young boy, he felt that this child was somewhat different. Now it seems that his guess was not wrong. This child is most likely a Taoist, and his cultivation time is definitely not short. While talking, the young boy had already walked in front of Yi Guozhong. He raised his head and stared at Li Zixuan's face with burning eyes. But don't forget, he is only 11 or 12 years old. His face is still childish. Coupled with such a mature expression, it will make people want to laugh and think that he is pretending to be profound. Yi Guozhong's face didn't show any surprise. He was probably used to his grandson's behavior. At this moment, he put his hand on the boy's head with a comforted look on his face. A trace of kindness flashed across his solemn face. At this time, the old lady also stood up and walked over. She took the boy's hand with a smile and said to Li Zixuan, "Xiao Xian, this is your cousin, Xiao Shan. Since he was 4 years old, he liked to go to your uncle's study to read books about Taoist cultivation methods and talisman seal scripts. He is always mysterious and always likes to wander. This time, I brought him here to let him see the world in Chang'an. Xiao Xian, you are familiar with Chang'an. Take your cousin out for a walk when you have time." After listening to Yi Guozhong's narration, Li Zixuan didn't have much resentment toward his maternal grandmother. Instead, he had a lot of respect for her. It was said that in a big family, there were all disgusting and filthy fights for power. It was already not easy for his maternal grandmother to help his mother time and time again. At this moment, he nodded in response. "Well, grandmother, don't worry. I will often take Xiaoshan out for a walk." Then, in order to show the care of an elder brother to his younger brother, he reached out and patted the boy's head. He didn't expect that the boy deftly avoided it. "Cousin, please don't call me Xiaoshan. That's what grandfather and grandmother call me. My name is Yi Fashion. Please call me by my name." The boy raised his head and frowned slightly. He said with a serious face, It seemed that he was very dissatisfied with Li Zexu's behavior and the way he called him. The old lady laughed, and everyone laughed. Li Zixuan was amused and wanted to laugh too. But after hearing the boy's real name, the smile on his face suddenly froze. Haha, father, mother, Xiaoshan is so cute. By the way, father, what Xiaoshan said about the Destined One, is it true? Mrs. Li smiled and returned to the topic she was worried about. Yi Guozhong stroked his beard and said with emotion, of course it is true. No one can say for sure about this child's future. No one can affect it. Only he can decide. But Yuzhu, you don't have to worry. From the fact that Xiao Xian has been conferred the title of Marquis at such a young age, his future will definitely be smooth. Mrs. Li heard this and felt a little relieved. She smiled and said, Father, mother, sit here. I'll go to the kitchen to arrange the food. The old lady smiled and nodded. At this moment, she saw Han Yushi, who had not made a sound since she entered the door. She smiled and said, Oh, this is Xiao Xian's wife, right? Come and let grandmother take a look. A trace of panic flashed across Han Yushi's face. Mrs. Li saw this and came over to pat her on the shoulder. She smiled and said, Yushi, go and talk to your grandmother for a while. Mother will go to the kitchen to arrange lunch. Yes, mother. Han Yushi nodded reluctantly. Then, she walked to the old lady's side and bowed. She shouted, Yushi greets grandmother, grandfather, and uncle. The old lady held Han Yushi's hand and smiled from ear to ear. Yushi, right? Your name is nice, and you're really handsome. You and my good grandson are really a match made in heaven. Yi Guozhong did not show any expression this time. Instead, he nodded at Han Yushi rather kindly. Yi Huiming, who was sitting on the chair, also stood up and nodded in greeting. The old lady of Yi family looked Han Yushi up and down. The more she looked, the more satisfied and happy she was. She pulled Han Yushi to the side and sat down. She rolled up her sleeves and took off the bracelet on her wrist. She smiled kindly and said, Come. Grandmother came in a hurry this time and didn't prepare a gift. This bracelet has accompanied grandmother for most of her life. Today, I'll give it to you as a greeting gift. I hope that you and Xian Heir can give birth to a great-grandson for grandmother as soon as possible. He. Mother. Yi Huiming was shocked when she saw this. Just as she was about to say something, the old lady glared at her. The expected difficulties did not appear. Han Yushi could not help but heave a sigh of relief in her heart. Facing the bracelet that the old lady had worn for her entire life, how could she dare to accept it? She hurriedly said, Grandmother, Yushi appreciates your kindness, but this bracelet is too precious. What's so precious about it? It's just a dead object. Come. Grandmother will help you put it on. The old lady grabbed Han Yushi's hand without any explanation. Then, she put the bracelet that had accompanied her for decades on Han Yushi's fair and slender wrist. The old lady sighed and said, Beautiful jade matches a beauty. Grandmother is old. This jade bracelet is just right for you to wear. The old lady's eyes inadvertently revealed a hint of reluctance. It happened to be seen by the attentive Han Yushi. She was moved and said, Thank you, grandmother. Grandmother, you're not old. You look very energetic. Chapter 947. Yuri Fashion. Seeing that his wife was fine, Li Zixuan looked at his cousin again. He paused and asked in a low voice. Yes. The young man nodded. His words were as precious as gold. Li Zixuan swallowed his saliva and asked again, Which dharma is it? Which is good? The young man looked at Li Zixuan strangely and paused for a while before answering. The dharma is not passed on to others. The best is like water. Water benefits all things and does not compete for the goodness. Li Zixuan was finally shocked. He took 2 steps back and looked at the young man in front of him in horror. He muttered to himself, Yi Fashion, you are really Yi Fashion. Previously, Li Zixuan still had a trace of luck, thinking that it was possible that they had the same pronunciation but different characters. At this moment, his heart really grasped the grass. He never thought that his cousin was actually Yi Fashion. Yi Fashion, in the Tang Dynasty, other than Li Chunfeng and Yuan Tiangang, the most famous Taoist priest was Yi Fashion. His disciples were rare in the history of Taoism. According to historical records, Yi Fashion had the skills of nourishment and divination. He was good at writing talismans. He lived in Gaozong, Wuzetian, and Zhongzong for 50 years. He often went to the mountains and was summoned to the palace. In the Gaozong Dynasty, Yi Fashion completely became the leader of Taoism in the world. Not only did he win the respect of the world, including the emperor, but he also actively participated in politics. He made a great contribution by helping Li Dan to ascend the throne and Li Longji to rise to the throne. He was once titled as the National Celestial Master and Duke of Yu. The status of the Yi family of Nanyang also reached the peak because of this. In the 10th year of Emperor Minghuang's Kaiyuan, Yi Fashion, who was 107 years old, died without any illness. It was said that the courtyard he lived in at that time was full of fragrance and celestial music. It was even more confirmed that Yi Fashion had ascended to immortality. 19 years after Yi Fashion's death, Emperor Xuanzong of the Tang Dynasty wrote the inscriptions of Honored Master Yi, describing in great detail Yi Fashion's diving into the water palace, flying into the fire room, cutting open the stomach and cleaning the intestines, cutting open the eyes and selecting the membranes, conscripting the ghosts, running away from the gods, and other mystical techniques. Gradually, Yi Fashion became the god worshipped by the Yulu believers. In the official history, Yi Fashion was a human, a noble and virtuous person. But in the folklore, he was a god, a Tao immortal with remarkable abilities. Such an awesome national heavenly master and immortal of the mortal world had become his cousin? At this moment, Li Zishuan's brain couldn't wrap itself around the situation. At this time, he couldn't help but feel that his mother was really awesome. She was actually born in such a big family, and she even had such an awesome nephew. Yi Guozhong also noticed the commotion. He walked over and frowned. He looked at Li Zishuan and asked, "Xiao Xian, what's wrong? Is there something wrong with the name Shan?" Logically speaking, the two words Shan and Shan were originally based on the Book of Changes and the Taoist principles of Yin and Yang and the 5 elements. It took him a lot of effort to come up with the name. How could there be a problem? Li Zishuan came back to his senses and quickly waved his hand. No. This name is very good, very good. Grandfather, please take a seat first. I'll bring my cousin around the mansion to familiarize himself with the environment. After saying that, he dragged Yi Fashion out without any explanation. Shan, how many years have you been cultivating? Who is your master? Outside the house, Li Zishuan didn't bring Yi Fashion around the mansion. Instead, he went to the pavilion in the west courtyard to fish for information from this kid. After all, he was very curious about the legendary heavenly master Yi. Moreover, most of the historical records about Yi Fashion were too fantastical and legendary. Li Zishuan more or less had doubts in his heart. Cousin, please don't call me Shan. Yi Fashion frowned and said seriously. Okay. I won't call you Shan. Meeting such a serious kid, Li Zishuan felt helpless. He could only change the way he addressed Yi Fashion. Then, Fashion, how many years have you been cultivating? Who is your master? Yi Fashion then answered, Cousin, I started cultivating when I was 4 years old. Now, I've been cultivating for more than 8 years. However, the Tao that I cultivate comes from my own family. I haven't found a master yet. For next year onwards, I plan to leave Nanyang and travel around the famous mountains to find a master and find a way to transcend the Tao. The 4 generations of Yi family cultivators all used Yin arts and impeachment to save people. It could be said that the family had a long history. Even if Yi Fashion didn't go out, he could still learn the profound Tao. Before Yi Fashion, the Yi family had many famous Taoist priests. For example, his granduncle Yi Jingning was good at Tao, but he was good at literature. When his grandfather was still alive, he was a Taoist priest and a Taoist priest. He had more than 100 disciples. Yi Jingning's status in the Tao world was even higher than Yi Guozhong's. The Old Tang book, biography of Zhongzong Wei Shuren, stated, the Taoist priest Yi Jingning was good at charms and restrictions. He often served qin ku and was also good at medicine. Guanglu Shaoqing Yangjun was good at cooking meals. They all went in and out of the palace. Yi Jingning not only obtained the position of Daoist priest because of his knowledge and Dao skills, but also became the favorite of the empress. He went in and out of the palace. His political status was extraordinary. This was really a mature child, Li Zixuan muttered in his heart. He didn't know what kind of education Yi Fashion received in his childhood to develop such a strange personality. This was the Yi family's fortune. At the same time, Li Zixuan also felt that this was Yi Fashion's misfortune. This kind of life meant that he was destined to lose his carefree childhood. Li Zixuan was surprised to hear that this child was going to travel alone next year. He said with a straight face, "Fashion, do your father and grandfather know that you are going to travel?" Even though Yi Fashion was young and mature, he was still afraid of his father and grandfather. At this moment, he shrunk his neck and showed a rare, guilty look on his face. He answered crisply, "So what if they know? So what if they don't? My goal is to cultivate and save the world. No one can stop me from going out to search for the Tao." "What a stubborn child," Li Zixuan said helplessly. "Fashion, have you heard of the saying that parents should not travel when they are alive? You are still young. It is inevitable that you will encounter danger when you travel. Why don't you wait a few years before you consider this?" Yi Fashion raised his head and said solemnly, "My father and mother are still healthy. It is the best time for me to go out and search for the Tao. Besides, the love of family is just a small love. Saving the world is the greatest love. There are countless people in the world who are suffering from diseases. I want to search for the Tao and come back to save the world. Father and mother will definitely understand me." All right. Li Zixuan had been in the Tang Empire for so long and was used to seeing all kinds of weirdos. However, he was still defeated by this weirdo in front of him. He opened his mouth and was about to say something when suddenly, Lan Er's voice came from behind him. "Ah, brother, you are here." Chapter 948. Lan Er. When Li Zixuan turned around, Lan Er had already skipped over. Li Zixuan couldn't help but rub the ponytail on his little sister's head. He smiled and said, "Lana, where did you go just now? Why didn't I see you after so long?" Lana smiled and slapped Li Zixuan's big hand away. Then, she said weakly, Lana was looking for little Gray to play in the backyard. Grandfather and uncle looked very fierce. Lana didn't dare to play in the front yard. Before Li Zixuan came back, the main hall was occupied with Li Jingma's being criticized special meeting. The atmosphere in the house had always been very oppressive. Children were usually more afraid of this kind of atmosphere. So Lana sneaked in the backyard to play with little Gray. Brother, isn't he that?" As she spoke, Lana noticed Yi Fashion standing behind Li Zixuan. She quickly covered her mouth with her hand. At the same time, a trace of embarrassment appeared on her delicate little face. It was very cute. After all, she was bad-mouthing someone's father and grandfather in front of them. How could she not be embarrassed? "Ha! Lan Er, this is your cousin, Yi Fashion. You should have seen him before." Li Zixuan couldn't help but laugh and say. Lan Er had an "I know I was wrong" expression on her face. She said to Yi Fashion in a crisp voice, "Nice to meet you, cousin." Yi Fashion wanted to say something, but seeing Lan Er's cute appearance, he couldn't bring himself to scold her. He could only mutter, "Nice to meet you, cousin. Haha, that's enough. Let's go back to the front yard to eat. Otherwise, mother will come and call us later." Li Zixuan stood up and patted both of them on the shoulder. Yes, let's eat, let's eat." Lan was starving. Mrs. Li was very happy to see her parents after so many years. She was also able to untie the knot in her heart. This level of happiness was almost comparable to the time when she saw her son return from Mount Longhu. Although she had been expelled from the family back then, Mrs. Li understood that being able to be together with the person she loved in such a big family under such circumstances was already the best ending. Haven't you seen other young ladies of noble families fight to the death for marriages they don't like? In the end, their parents are still unmoved and watch coldly as they commit suicide. The living conditions of big clans were good, but most of the so-called big clans were cold-blooded. She, Yi Yuzhu, was able to walk together with Li Jingma in the end, because Yi Guozhong was soft-hearted at the last moment. Expelling him from the family was just an explanation to the other members of the family. Mother, try this mushroom celestial steamed pigeon. Yi Yuzhu picked up a small piece of pigeon and placed it in the old lady's bowl. The Yi family was also considered a wealthy and influential family. What kind of food had they not eaten? However, the old lady had never heard of this dish before. She couldn't help but ask curiously, Yuzhu, why is the name of this dish so strange? This old lady has never heard of it before. Yi Yuzhu chuckled and said, Mother, this dish is a new dish that Yushi came up with a while ago. Put the pigeon into a pot in advance. Add mushrooms, scallions, ginger, garlic, immortal wine, and salt, and mix it well. After marinating it for 2 hours, put it into a pot and steamed it for 2 hours. This dish is the most nourishing. Mother, quickly try it. The old lady said in surprise, Oh, it's actually a dish that my granddaughter-in-law came up with? This old lady has to try it properly. After saying that, she picked up the white and tender pigeon and put it into her mouth. Who knew that the pigeon meat would melt in her mouth? It was even more tender than tofu. Moreover, a strong mushroom fragrance and wine fragrance instantly exploded in her mouth. The old lady had lived for most of her life and was not a greedy person at all. At this moment, her eyes widened and she picked up another piece for herself. After eating, the old lady sighed. In Yuzhu, this pigeon tastes really good. It melts in the mouth, is smooth and tender, and leaves a fragrance in the mouth and teeth. It's simply endless aftertaste. The kitchen maids of the Marquis's mansion definitely can't do this. It should be you who made it, right? I didn't expect my Yuzhu's cooking skills to be so good now. Jing Ma Lan and Xiao Xian have been blessed these years. Mrs. Li smiled and said, Mother, your eyesight is really good. It's not easy for you and father to come. Of course, Yuzhu has to personally cook a few delicious dishes for you. Actually, Yushi is better at doing this than me. I learned it all from her. If she personally cooks, Mother, you will know what true delicacies are. The old lady smiled and said, Hee hee, not only is my granddaughter-in-law beautiful, but she also cooks so well. Xiao Xian, you have to treat Yushi well and strive to give birth to a great-grandson for grandmother as soon as possible. Yes, grandmother. Li Zishuan did not want to dampen the old lady's mood, so he agreed. Han Yushi's face was flushed red, and everyone in the room laughed. Of course, other than the other two little fellows who were engrossed in eating. Mother, you don't know. Actually, the one with the best cooking skills in our family at first was Xian. The new dishes in the Zuetian restaurant in the West City were almost all made by him at the beginning of the year. But later, this child was put in an important position by the emperor and became busier and busier. He didn't have the mood to think about food anymore. One look, and you can tell that she's his biological mother. She can say that her son is lazy, so tactfully, naturally, and in a dignified manner. Later on, when Yushi married into our family, this child followed the new dishes that Xiao Xian made in the past and came up with many dishes himself, such as fried chicken with black bean sauce, fresh shrimp with sweet wine, mushroom chicken pot, fried crab meat with rice flavor, shrimp scallops, kung pao shredded taro, abalone mushrooms, colorful beans fried rice cake, snow pear, and white fungus stewed meat soup. All right. Yuzhu, stop talking. If you continue, your mother's saliva will flow out. The old lady narrowed her eyes and quickly interrupted Yi Yuzhu's words. She looked at Han Yushi next to her and said with a loving expression, These dishes, just hearing the names makes grandmother salivate. Yushi, Xiao Xian is really lucky to have married you. Mrs. Li smiled and said, Isn't that so? Mother, look, Xiao Xian has been married for less than half a year, and he's already a little fat from eating. Hee hee. The old lady smiled and said, It's good to be fat. It's good to be fat. Xiao Xian is still too thin. He should eat more. Who asked this child to be so lucky to have married such a good wife? It's just that my granddaughter-in-law has suffered. Han Yushi was a little overwhelmed by this fierce praise. She hurriedly said, Mother, grandmother, this is what Yushi should do. Don't praise me like this. Husband is out handling official business all day long. It's much harder than Yushi. Huh, wife, you don't have to be modest. Mother and grandmother are telling the truth. However, the one who deserves the most praise should be me. Who asked me to have such a good I to choose you as my wife and marry no one else but you? At this moment, Lisa Schwan, who had silently made a fortune, suddenly began to boast shamelessly and shamelessly. There was a hint of humor in his voice, but it was more of his gratitude to his wife. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone at the dining table laughed. Han Yushi covered her mouth, and her heart was filled with sweetness. At this moment, she felt that all the previous hardships were worth it. Yi Guizhong frowned. He wanted to say that it was not polite to laugh while eating, but then he remembered that this was not his home, so he gave up. In fact, ever since he entered the Li family, he felt that this place was very different. As for what exactly was different, he couldn't quite pinpoint it. If he had to pinpoint it, it was probably happiness. Everyone here, including the servants, was happy. It was the kind of happiness that came from the heart, not a forced smile. He had cultivated for decades and had his own way of seeing through people's hearts. Mother, it's not easy for you and father to come here. Stay in Chang, and for a few more days. It will be the end of the year in a little more than a month. How about you spend the new year in Chang'an? It will be very lively here during the new year. After laughing for a while, Mrs. Li looked at the old lady and said. Han Yushi also said yes. Grandmother, it's getting colder and colder, and the road will be difficult to walk. Why don't you and grandfather stay in Chang, and for a few more days? I can take this time to be filial. Husband, what do you say? The old lady patted Han Yushi's shoulder and narrowed her eyes. Yi Guizhong also looked at Lisa Schwan. Han Yushi's last sentence seemed ordinary, but it was actually a question. She was asking if Lisa Schwan had forgiven the Yi family for driving Mrs. Li out of the family back then. Now, anyone with a discerning eye could see that Lisa Schwan was in charge of the Li family now, not Li Jingma. Yi Guizhong also wanted to take this opportunity to see Lisa Schwan's attitude towards the Yi family. From father's point of view, what Yi Guizhong did back then was not wrong, and he had never regretted it over the years. But how could the things in the world be measured by a simple right or wrong? As Yi Yuju's son, Lisa Schwan certainly had a reason to take revenge for his mother's past. And now, Lisa Schwan also had the ability to do so. Although the Yi family had a good reputation in Nanyang, they were not qualified to go head-to-head with Lisa Schwan, the marquis of the great Tang Empire who was favored by the emperor. But if Lisa Schwan really shed all pretense of cordiality, he would also be cursed for being unfilial. In this era, if anyone was labeled as unfilial, then that person's future was basically over. Therefore, it could be seen that the Yi and Li families were in a delicate situation where both sides would benefit if they cooperated, and both sides would lose if they fought. Although Yi Guizhong looked indifferent on the surface, as the former head of the Yi family, how could he really not care? Lisa Schwan's choice was directly related to the fate of the Yi family. The atmosphere suddenly became heavy. Seeing that most people were looking at him, Lisa Schwan also put down his chopsticks. He was not wise, so naturally, he could understand the key points. There was no doubt that he had resentment towards the Yi family in his heart, not to mention how well his mother usually treated him. Even if she did not treat him well, he should be grateful to his mother, because if it were not for his mother's insistence, there would not be a person like Lisa Schwan in the Tang Empire, and there would not be a story of spiritual master Lingshu accepting a disciple. Then, as a person who had transmigrated from the modern era, he might have transmigrated into someone else's body. Anyway, no matter who he transmigrated into, Lisa Schwan felt that his identity would not be as perfect as his current one. A rich second generation, a martial artist, and a disciple of a hidden expert. It was really difficult to have such a perfect identity. Therefore, not only was Mrs. Li a good person, but she was also Lisa Schwan's great benefactor. In the end, he did not expect that his mother had been expelled from the family many years ago, and his father had been beaten by the Yi family's servants with sticks. How could Lisa Schwan not be angry? To be honest, when he first heard about this kind of thing, he even had the thought of burning down the Yi family. But Seeing that his mother looked at him with a trace of pleading in her eyes, Li Zishuan's heart suddenly softened. It seemed that even though his mother had been hurt by the Yi family, she still had a lot of feelings for the Yi family. Also, as the saying goes, blood is thicker than water. His mother, Yi Guozhong, and the old lady of the Yi family were connected by blood. How could it be broken just like that? Forget it, forget it. Li Zishuan sighed silently and said with a smile, "My wife is right. Grandmother, you should stay in Chang and for a few more days. Yushi knows how to cook a lot of dishes. She can take advantage of these days to cook one by one to show filial piety to you." The heavy atmosphere in the house suddenly disappeared without a trace as Li Zishuan's voice fell. The old lady laughed heartily and said, "Okay, since my good grandson and granddaughter-in-law like me so much, then I will stay in Chang and for a few more days to enjoy my life and try my granddaughter-in-law's cooking while I'm at it. Hee hee. Okay. Grandmother, don't worry. Yushi guarantees that you won't eat the same dishes every month, and all of them will be delicious." Han Yushi breathed a sigh of relief. She actually understood Li Zishuan's current situation better than anyone else. She was afraid that Li Zishuan would let his emotions affect his decisions. For the sake of the resentment in his heart, he would disregard everything and do the unfilial act of putting righteousness before family. At that time, he would be spurned by the world. Fortunately, Li Zishuan made a wise choice and did not let his emotions affect his decisions. "Yo, there won't be the same dishes every month? What you're saying makes your grandmother want to stay here forever," the old lady said, half jokingly. "Mother, what do you mean by staying here? If you like it here, what's the harm in staying here forever? Yuju can fulfill her filial piety by your side." Mrs. Li heard and hurriedly said, Good. Old master, what do you think?" The old lady replied with a smile and then asked Yi Guozhong. Yi Guozhong coughed twice and said reservedly, "I think there's nothing going on in the family recently. There's no harm in going back a few days later. However, as the current head of the Yi family, Huiming can't stay outside for too long. After 3 days, Huiming, you will return in Anyang. As for Shan stay in Chang and to accompany me." Logically speaking, although he did not like Li Jingma and had made things difficult for Li Jingma many times in the past, now that Li Zishuan had given him a way out, wouldn't he be too insensible if he still put on the airs of an elder? It seemed that Yi Huiming respected Yi Guozhong very much. She quickly put down her chopsticks, stood up, and said solemnly, "Yes, father. When you and mother want to go back, please send someone to inform me in advance so that I can come and pick you up personally." Li Zishuan interrupted, "Uncle, there's no need. When the time comes, I will send guards to escort grandfather and grandmother." Chapter 949. Cousin, after your master passed away, why didn't you stay at Mount Longhu to continue your cultivation? Why did you return to Chang'an? Is it because you didn't have a good life at Mount Longhu? The next morning after breakfast, Li Zishuan planned to bring his cousin to Cloud Yamacho to broaden his horizons. On the way, Yi Fashion asked. From his point of view, Mount Longhu was the holy land of cultivation for all the Taoists in the world. Li Zishuan had been cultivating for 8 years, but he suddenly left to return to Chang'an. This was something that Yi Fashion, who was determined to use his Taoist skills to save the world, could not understand. When Li Zishuan heard this question, he subconsciously thought to himself, if the original Li Zishuan had really stayed at Mount Longhu to cultivate, how would I have the chance to transmigrate here? I might have already been reported to the King of Hell. Although this was what he thought, he could not say it out loud. He smiled and said, "No, the head of Mount Longhu and Junior Marshal Uncle are very good to me. The reason why I returned to Chang and is because my parents are getting old. If I don't return to fulfill my filial piety to them, how different would I be from a beast?" Yi Fashion's expression was a little unnatural. He said, "Then, cousin, how will you continue your cultivation in the future?" Li Zishuan turned around and looked at Yi Fashion's young face, which was pretending to be mature. He said, "Fashion, I think you have a misunderstanding about cultivation. Who said that you can only cultivate in a Taoist temple? As long as you have the Tao in your heart, where can you not cultivate? What is not Tao? What is not cultivation? The heavenly Tao is not kind-hearted. It is always with good people. The level of a cultivator depends on the depth of their use of Tao. Tao is not the private property of any immortal, God, or true saint. Why should we care about where we cultivate? Yi Fashion was stunned. After a long while, he bowed to one side and put his hands together in front of his stomach. He bowed from bottom to top and said, "Cousin, you are wise. Fashion has learned a lot." Li Zishuan's expression changed. Yi Fashion's etiquette was very particular. Taoists had 3 etiquettes and 3 kowtows. Towards mortals, they would bow and kowtow. Towards gods, immortals, and immortals, they would bow and kowtow. Yi Fashion's etiquette was the standard Taoist kowtow. This was usually done towards the elders of the sect. From this, it could be seen that Yi Fashion was really touched by the words just now. Li Zishuan returned the etiquette by cupping his hands and said, "Monk, everyone has their own Tao. Cousin's Tao is the Tao of the mortal world. In the world of mortals, treat your family well and help those around you that you can. Of course, I also hope that you could be a Taoist to the mortal world in the future and not hide in the mountains to cultivate. You don't have to sit and watch the change of dynasties and not think about the people of the world." Yi Fashion bowed again and said, "Cousin, don't worry. Fashion wants to learn the profound Tao and walk the world to save the people of the world. I will not be a blind Taoist who only knows how to cultivate in seclusion." Li Zishuan smiled and nodded. He brought Yi Fashion and continued walking towards the Cloud Mountain. Yes, they were walking. He didn't know what was wrong with this cheap cousin of his. The home mansion clearly had horses, but he wasn't willing to ride them. Even if there was a carriage, he wasn't willing to sit in it. He said that he wanted to see how the people were living. Although Li Zishuan didn't want to, he couldn't just tie this kid up on a horse, right? Even though he had only spent a day with Yi Fashion, Li Zishuan already knew that when his cousin was stubborn, even 8 horses wouldn't be able to pull him back. Therefore, he might as well accompany this unlucky kid and walk together. Bang, bang, bang. Use more strength. The soil is still loose. How can you do it? Han shouted on, "Didn't you eat?" "Second Master Lu, I won't hide it from you. I really didn't eat this morning." "Hey, you little rascal. You only know how to talk nonsense with me. Mother asterisk cur, work harder. The weather is getting colder. If we can't fix it by the time it freezes, we will delay Marquis's important matter. Look at the construction team of the 4th Regiment. How fast are they progressing?" After they left the city, they walked through a section of the official road and arrived at the small path leading to the Cloud Mountain. They walked forward for about 2 or 3 miles. Then they heard a series of loud, crashing sounds as well as the noise of some people. Yi Fashion looked over curiously. In the end, he was blocked by a small hill. He asked, "Cousin, what's going on over there? Why is it so lively?" Li Zishuan smiled and said, "The construction team of the academy and the villagers are repairing the road. We will see it after we turn this corner." Repairing the road? Yi Fashion thought to himself, how could there be such a big movement when they were repairing the road? However, even though he was doubtful, he still lowered his head and quickened his pace. After a while, the 2 of them had circled around the mountain top. What entered their eyes was a dense mass of people. Some were hammering the ground with large hammers. Some were shoveling soil to fill holes. Some were pushing carts to dump sand and stones, and some were dumping mud onto the flat road. However, the mud was greenish-gray in color, which made Yi Fashion feel surprised. "Cousin, what is that slurry thing in the carriage?" Li Zishuan looked in the direction of his finger and replied, "That is cement. In the beginning, it can be shaped like mud. However, it will solidify after a period of time. Once solidified, it will be as hard as a rock. Even if it is raining, it will remain in its original state." Oh, there is such a magical thing in this world. Why have I never heard of it before? Yi Fashion could not help but feel that the capital was indeed different. A small place like Nanyang could not be compared to it. Li Zishuan smiled and said, "Cement has only been around for half a year. It has not spread to Nanyang yet. It is normal that you have not seen it before." While they were talking, the 2 of them had already approached the road construction site. A hale and hearty old man with white hair and a white beard walked towards them. It was Master Lu. "Yo, Marquis, you were here? Why did you not ride a horse today?" "And this is—" Lisa Schwan smiled and replied, "I wanted to train my legs, so I did not ride a horse today." "All right, Master Lu, this is my cousin. He just arrived in Chong yesterday. He wants to visit the academy today." Yi Fashion saw that when Lisa Schwan spoke to the old man in front of him, he did not put on any airs like Marquis. His tone was also not arrogant and condescending. Instead, there was some respect for an elder. Yi Fashion was surprised but did not show it on his face. He saluted Master Lu and said, "Greetings, Master Lu." Master Lu was flattered and said, "Hey, little Lang Jun, you are too courteous. Since you are Marquis' relative, I should be the one greeting you." Lisa Schwan smiled and said, "What are you saying, Master Lu? You are my elder." "All right, Master Lu, this road looks like it is almost finished, right?" Master Lu wiped his sweat and said, "Hey, Marquis, it is almost over, almost over. There are only about 3 miles of road left to be repaired. It will take about 10 days to completely repair it. It is just that I am ashamed to say that we farmers are not very good at repairing this kind of cement road. We are dragging Regiment Commander Gong and the others down." When Li Zexuan first divided the construction corps, he set up 5 regimental commanders. They were Hu Hanyun, Master Lu, Chao Xiaofu, Gong Minyong, and Nai Taifeng. Later, in order to repair the cement road and the academy's project was almost completed, Li Zexuan disbanded 2 construction regiments, with a total of nearly 5,000 people. One was the 2nd Regiment of 2nd Master Lu, and the other was the 4th Regiment of Gong Minyong. Master Lu's prestige in this area was still very high. Later, the farmers who came to help repair the road were also under his command. In this way, Master Lu's 2nd Regiment now had more than 3,000 people in name. However, these farmers who came to help had not experienced the big project of Yanhuang College. Naturally, they lacked experience. As a result, although Master Lu's 2nd Regiment had more people, the overall progress was not much different from Master Lu's 4th Regiment. Li Zexuan smiled and said, "It's okay, there is no rush. Don't let the villagers be too tired. By the way, Master Lu, I asked my father-in-law to inform everyone to go into the mountains to pick herbs. Do you all know? It was out of good intentions that the farmers were willing to help with the road repairs. At first, Li Zexuan wanted to pay the workers who came to help, but the farmers refused to accept it no matter what. It was only after he changed the wages to a bucket of rice that the farmers reluctantly accepted. The price of a bucket of rice was much lower than the wages of the construction site. Facing such a group of kind-hearted farmers, what else could he complain about? Master Lu heard Li Zexuan's question and grinned. "Marquis, we all know. In the afternoon, it is said that each village will organize some young men to be guards. Even if they encounter wild beasts, they will not be afraid. Then, each family will send one person to go into the mountains to pick herbs. Heh, it is a pity that I am not free now. Otherwise, I would also go into the mountains to hunt wild beasts and let the kids in the village see Master Lu's archery skills." Li Zexuan could not help but laugh and said, "Ha ha, other people's treasured swords are not old, but Master Lu's divine arrows are not old. Ha!" Master Lu said proudly, "Of course. Back then, the villagers were hungry and wanted to go to the west of Yinshan to hunt. Master Lu, went as well. I met a big tiger with white forehead. Master Lu began to explain the heroic deeds of the past to the two of them. Li Zexuan was also happy to rest at the side. Yi Fashion, on the other hand, was frowning deeper as he listened. Half an hour later, they bid farewell to Master Lu and continued to walk on the wide and flat cement path towards Yinshan. Yi Fashion suddenly opened his mouth and said, "Cousin, if the farmers go into the mountains to pick herbs, then just pick herbs. Why do they have to fight wild beasts in the mountains? Everything in the world has spirituality. Wild beasts are also living creatures. That mountain forest originally belonged to them. Let's not talk about the farmers taking over the magpie's nest. Why do they have to search and exterminate them? Cousin, as a Taoist, not only did you not stop them, but you even secretly encouraged them? When it came to killing, Many people would think of benevolence like sweeping the floor for fear of harming the lives of ants and covering the lamp with gauze to protect the moths. However, some Taoist priests did eat meat. The Taoist doctrine did not support killing, but it did not forbid it either. Li Zixuan was inexplicably stunned. He did not expect Yi Fashion to ask such a question. After thinking for a while, he said in a deep voice, "Fashion, you are not wrong. Everything that is bloody has spirituality. That is to say, they have Taoism. There are early and late stages of enlightenment, and there are also differences in the speed of cultivation. Wild beasts are also living creatures. Logically speaking, they should not be killed easily, but sometimes killing is to protect them. When a wild beast wants to attack a person, what should you do? Kill, or use your Taoism to influence it. The people are just mortals. They only care about food, clothing, and taking care of the old and young. Everything they do is for survival. Is there anything wrong with that?" Li Zixuan remembered that during the War of Resistance against Japan in his previous life, Taoists held guns in one hand and incense in the other. After killing the Japanese, they also worshipped the gods. Compared to those Taoist priests who only knew how to cultivate in seclusion deep in the mountains and forests and did not care about the suffering of the people, such Taoist priests were the ones he admired. Killing is to protect them? Yi Fashion muttered under his breath and fell in a deep thought. When the sun was about to reach the top of their heads, the two finally reached the top of the cloud mountain. When they stepped through the mountain gate and saw the tall and majestic Yanhuang College building, Yi Fashion was still greatly shocked, even though he had mentally prepared himself. That small face of his that liked to pretend to be mature was now filled with shock and astonishment. "How is it, Fashion? Cousin, this college is not bad, right?" Li Zixuan saw that Yi Fashion finally showed a rare look of shock and was somewhat proud of himself. Gulp. "Yes, it is not bad." Yi Fashion swallowed his saliva and said, "This was more than just not bad. It could be called a celestial palace." Li Zixuan laughed and said, "Ha, let's go. I'll show you around the college." After that, he led Yi Fashion into the college. They visited the red building, the auditorium, the sports field, the cafeteria, the student dormitory, the laboratory building, and so on. Finally, the two returned to Guanghua Building and went to the courtyard where the telescope was placed. He did not expect to meet Li Chunfeng here. "Oh, Taoist Li is here too?" Li Zixuan walked up to him and said with a smile. "Marquis." Li Chunfeng was focused on fiddling with the telescope. When he heard the voice, he quickly turned around. When he saw that it was Li Zixuan, he heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Marquis, please don't blame me. I've discovered a few celestial bodies recently, so I've been using this telescope more frequently." Li Zixuan waved his hand and said, "It's okay. Isn't this thing made for humans to use? Use it as you please." "Oh, the light is so strong now. Aren't you afraid that it'll hurt your eyes?" Li Chunfeng shook his head and said, "I can't use it now. I could use it when the sun was just rising." Oh, it was this little friend. It was then that he noticed Yi Fashion behind Li Zixuan. Li Zixuan introduced him. "This is my cousin, Yi Fashion, from the Yi family of Nanyang. He has been cultivating for more than 8 years. Fashion, this is Taoist Li Chunfeng, currently working in the Taisha Bureau. He's an expert in Taoism and has a noble character." Yi Fashion walked up and saluted. "Greetings, Taoist Li." Li Chunfeng returned the salute and said in surprise, "The Yi family of Nanyang? Are you the Yi family of Sanzhou? Who is Yi Jing to you?" Yi Fashion answered, "Yes, the Yi family of Sanzhou. The person you're talking about is my granduncle." Li Chunfeng mumbled, "Granduncle? You're the descendant of Elder Yi. What a coincidence." Chapter 950. The Yi clan of Nanyang had a long history. They were the descendants of Yi Wang, the founder of the Yi clan of Jiangnan. Yi Wang was originally from Yi County of Nanyang Commandery, now part of Henan. He was once the governor of Yinmen and became the Guanglu minister at the end of the Han Dynasty. In the second year of Jian, and he came from Qingzhou to Jiangnan and lived in Danyang Zhejiang, now Zhejiang, Jiangsu. He was the founder of the Yi clan. Yi Ju was the governor of Tang, now Hangzhou, Zhejiang. He loved the people like his own children and was known as Father Yi. Yi Ju settled down in Tang under the persuasion of the people and became a prominent family there. After Yi Ju passed away, he was buried on the right side of Mao Mountain in Sonyang of Kuo Prefecture. He was known as the founder of the Yi clan of Kuo Prefecture or Mao Mountain. Yi Ju had 4 sons. The second son, Yi Jianshi, was promoted to General Zhichong and stayed in Sonyang. Yi Jian's descendants lived on the right side of Mao Mountain. Because of the long history of the temple, they were known as the Yi clan of Mao Mountain. Yi Fashion was Yi Ju's 19th descendant. Therefore, it was not wrong to say that Yi Fashion was from the Yi clan of Kuo Prefecture. Taoist master, you know my granduncle? Yi Fashion heard Li Chuanfeng's mumbling and was confused. His granduncle, Yi Jingning, was in his 70s. Li Chunfeng looked like he was in his 20s or 30s at most. Logically speaking, he should not have any connection with his granduncle. When your granduncle was still the chancellor of the Imperial College, I had a relationship with him. However, your granduncle might not remember it clearly. Li Chunfeng smiled, but did not want to go into details. Yi Fashion did not want to force him. The 2 Taoists who had left a deep mark in the history of the Tang Dynasty talked for another hour. Seeing that it was almost noon, Li Zishuan invited the 2 to Yanhuang College's cafeteria. Li Chunfeng could not help but sigh at the grandeur of Yanhuang College when he saw the clean and luxurious cafeteria. Yi Fashion was not surprised because this kid had just visited the cafeteria. The students were still in school, and there were no students who dared to skip classes to eat in advance. So the cafeteria was not crowded. Only a few teachers who did not have classes in the morning. When they saw Li Zishuan, they hurriedly greeted him. Li Zishuan greeted them with a smile and did not say much. The 3 of them ordered a few dishes and a pot of wine. They found a seat by the window and began to drink. Taoistly, my cousin plans to travel the world to seek down next year. You are his elder in this regard. You should teach him well. Li Zishuan took a sip of wine and a bite of soaring success. Then, he looked at Li Chunfeng and started talking about serious matters. He had only known Yi Fashion for a little more than a day. Logically speaking, they weren't close enough to worry about him, but he couldn't help but worry. Perhaps he, who had transmigrated from the modern world, knew that Yi Fashion was destined to be extraordinary, so he couldn't help but worry. Marquis, you're worried that your younger brother will be in danger when he goes out, right? Li Chunfeng took a sip of wine and looked at Li Zishuan as if he could see through the world. He smiled and said, Actually, Marquis, you don't have to worry. When I was 9 years old, I left home to travel the world. I went to the Calm Cloud Temple in Nantao Mountain to learn Tao. I didn't meet any bad people along the way. Moreover, your younger brother's forehead is high, his eyebrows are raised, and his forehead is full. These are the signs of wealth and wealth. He won't encounter any accidents in a short period of time. Li Zishuan realized that this Taoist priest in front of him was even more powerful. He started to travel the world when he was 9 years old. He couldn't help but think to himself, are all the people in the ancient times so powerful? Thank you for your kind words. Li Zishuan felt a little relieved. At the same time, he felt a little enlightened. If Li Chunfeng could see Yi Fashion's face, how could Yi Guozhong not see it? No wonder that old man was not worried at all. Everything was probably under his control. I should be the one thanking Marquis. I'm afraid that my son has caused trouble for Marquis in Yanhuang College. Li Chunfeng said politely. Li Zishuan shook his head and said, You must be joking. Your son has always been one of the top students in the college. How could he cause any trouble? The college would like to thank you for your good upbringing. Cultivators were also humans. Even though Li Chuanfeng's heart was as calm as still water, he couldn't help but smile when someone praised his son. He raised his wine glass and said with a smile, It's boring to keep thanking me. Let me toast to Marquis to thank you for your hospitality today. Li Zishuan nodded and drank his glass with a smile. Suddenly, Li Chunfeng said, Marquis, I found a celestial body that is very close to us. Although it's a little farther than the moon, it's much closer than the stars in the night sky. But what I find strange is that this celestial body can only be observed in the morning. It's impossible to find it at night, and there's a circle of light around this celestial body. It's very beautiful. I've looked through all the astrological maps left behind by our ancestors, but I couldn't find any record of this celestial body. It's really strange. Astrological maps were not the patent of modern people. The ancient people of China had been observing the heavens for a long time. They had made many achievements that modern China was proud of. They invented astronomical tools such as the celestial sphere, and many others. During the Sui and Tang dynasties, people combined astrology and numerology, and the astrological theory was born. It was based on the idea of heaven and man as one, and used the changes of the stars to predict the good and bad luck of people. By observing the changes of the stars in the sky, people could predict the good and bad luck of people. The 3 enclosures and 4 signs, the 28 mansions, the 7 political systems, and the 4 miscellaneous elements were the basis of the astrological theory. After Li Chunfeng finished speaking, Yi Fashion's eyes widened. He never thought that the cylinder with a support frame in the courtyard of Guanghua Building was actually used to observe the stars. Furthermore, from what Li Chunfeng said, it was to observe the stars during the day. Why did it sound so mysterious? Li Zixuan was secretly shocked. Based on Li Chunfeng's description, it was very likely that he had found Saturn by accident. Saturn could be regarded as one of the more peculiar planets in the solar system. Through a telescope, its appearance was like a straw hat. The existence of the halo made Saturn the most beautiful planet among the stars, causing the viewers to exclaim in admiration. At first, people thought that Saturn was the only planet in the solar system with rings. However, from the late 1970s to the late 1980s, the discovery of the rings of Uranus, Jupiter, and Neptune changed this view. The telescope made by Mo Lingwei did not have a large aperture and magnification, so the imaging effect was not good. Therefore, it ruled out the possibility that the celestial bodies Li Chunfeng saw were Uranus, Neptune, and Jupiter. Compared to these celestial bodies, Saturn's rings were more obvious and easier to find. If one was lucky, they could see Saturn's rings with their naked eyes, even without the help of a telescope. Congratulations, Taoist priest. You have found a new planet. In time, you might be able to perfect the existing astrological map. By then, your name will be recorded in history. Li Zixuan clasped his hands together and smiled. He did not tell Li Chunfeng about the 9 planets in the solar system. Oh, it should be the 8 planets. Some things were too easy to get, and people would not cherish them. Sometimes, it felt good to be a quiet prophet and let people discover things that they already knew. Li Chunfeng quickly waved his hand and said, "This is not my credit. If it wasn't for the help of Yanhuang College's telescope, I wouldn't have found this. Besides, there is still one thing I don't understand. Why can't I see this planet at night? And why is there a ring around it?" At this time, Li Chunfeng was talking about his new discovery. He forgot about the rule of not talking when eating and sleeping. Although Li Zixuan had never shown any talent in astronomy, Li Chunfeng's intuition told him that Li Zixuan must know something. Li Zixuan thought for a while and said, "Taoist priest, you can think about it. Why can't you see the moon during the day, but only at night? The principle of the celestial body that can only be seen during the day might be similar to the moon. The angular distance between Saturn and the Sun was smaller than that of Mercury. Saturn basically rose and set with the Sun. Therefore, when the Sun rose in the morning, as long as the weather was clear and the air visibility was high enough, Saturn's rings could be clearly seen with ordinary telescopes. This was how Galileo discovered Saturn in the past with his self-made telescope. As for the ring around the planet, as long as you understand why the moon shines, you will know what the ring is. Saturn's ring was formed by the debris of comets and asteroids colliding with the larger moon Saturn. The ring could contain a lot of water. It was made of ice and snowballs with diameters ranging from a few centimeters to a few meters. Under the sunlight, these substances formed the light belt that people saw through the reflection of the sun. Li Chunfeng fell in a deep thought. After a while, he cupped his fists and said, "Marquis, you're really knowledgeable. I've learned a lot. You're too kind. When the telescope is improved in the future, I believe that you will be able to find more planets. We will celebrate for you then. Mo Lingwei and Yin Xiaoning were rushing to produce a batch of military telescopes for the military. Therefore, the improvement of the astronomical telescope was temporarily put on hold. However, Li Zixuan believed that as the telescope technology in the workshop became more mature, the telescopes produced would be more advanced. By then, Li Chunfeng might be able to find all the planets in the solar system with the help of the telescope. In that case, Li Chunfeng might bring up the heliocentric theory. However, he did not know if he would be seen as an outlier. After all, when the theory was first brought up in the West, many people suffered because of it. Yi Fashion was stunned as he listened to their conversation. In the past, he was proud of his knowledge. Of course, he had heard a lot about Li Zixuan. He thought that his cousin was quite capable since he was able to reach such a high position with his own efforts. However, he did not expect him to be so knowledgeable. There were many things that he had never heard of, but Li Zixuan was able to talk with his cousin. This was the difference between them. At this moment, Yi Fashion was even more determined to go out and seek Taoism. If he did not step out of the house, he would be a frog at the bottom of the well for the rest of his life. The lunch lasted for almost an hour. When the students were about to leave school, the three of them finally left. After lunch, Li Zixuan went back to the Yinshan residence to rest for a while Yi Fashion meditated in the backyard. In the afternoon, Li Zixuan prepared to return to Chang, and with Yi Fashion, who had gone out to collect wind and had a bountiful harvest. Originally, he wanted to bring his cousin to the west of Yinshan to see if the farmers would encounter any beasts when they were gathering herbs. However, Yi Fashion could not bear to see the beasts killed, so he gave up on the idea. When they came to Chang, and Li Zixuan did not want to continue walking. He felt that it was a waste of time, so he borrowed 2 horses from the guards of the academy. Each of them rode 1 horse and rushed back to Chang, and all the horses of Li Zixuan's guards were equipped with horseshoes. When they walked on the hard and flat cement road, the sound of the horses' hooves hitting the ground was particularly clear. Not only did people like to walk on the cement road, horses also liked to walk on it. Once they were on the cement road, they could clearly feel that the horses were running faster. At this speed, it didn't take long for them to reach the end of the cement road. After another quarter of an hour, they finally left the small path and walked onto the main road. Who would have thought that they would be greeted by a large group of soldiers? It was a grandiose group of about a few thousand people. Whoa! When Li Zixuan saw the leader of the group, he hurriedly stopped his warhorse and jumped off to greet him. "Your Highness, are you leading the soldiers to the south?" Li Zixuan asked. Yes, the person was Li Xiaogong. There were dozens of officials behind him. When Li Xiaogong saw that the person who had come was Li Zixuan, he had the army move forward slowly first. He would catch up with the officials in a while. Then he replied to Li Zixuan, "That's right. Now that the prototype of the Department of Shipping has been completed and the officials of the key departments are in place, His Majesty is in a hurry, so this prince can only bring them to Guangdong in such a hurry." It was obvious that Li Xiaogong did not want to go to the south at this time. After all, it would be the new year in a month. If Li Xiaogong went to Guangdong now, it was very likely that he would have to spend the new year there. "Your Highness, please be careful." Li Zixuan cupped his fists and said, "Oh, this little guy is?" Li Xiaogong saw Yi Fashion and asked curiously. Li Zixuan introduced, "Your Highness, this is my cousin, Yi Fashion. He is from a Yi family in Nanyang. He just arrived in Chang'an yesterday." "Cousin?" Li Xiaogong pondered for a moment and said, "Oh, your mother's family is willing to come and find your mother? Haha, I know a little about your mother's matter. I didn't expect the Yi family to give in the end, ha." Li Zixuan was speechless. Hearing Li Xiaogong's words, he already knew about the Li and Yi families. However, this guy was really tight-lipped. He had never mentioned it before. He was really cunning. "Haha, by the way, Xiaoxian, take a closer look at my team. Is there anyone you know?" Li Xiaogong suddenly lowered his voice and said mysteriously to Li Zixuan. Chapter 9:51. on the official road outside Chong and City. Li Zishuan's mysterious words had piqued Li Zishuan's curiosity. He had been so focused on talking that he hadn't noticed the lineup Li Xiaogong had brought with him to the south. He calmly glanced behind Li Xiaogong. Although Li Zishuan didn't know the names of these officials, he had seen them all in court before. There were officials from the Ministry of Civil Affairs, the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Rights, and the Ministry of Appointments. When he saw the gloomy-faced official at the back of the line, Li Zishuan almost laughed out loud. Who else could it be other than Cui Shanfu? Speaking of which, Li Zishuan hadn't even had the time to take revenge on the old fellow when Cui Shanfu had urged the diplomatic corps to go to Yanhuan College to watch the military training exercise. He hadn't expected Li Xiaogong to be so supportive, silently bringing this old fellow to Lingnan. Let's see how this old fellow can jump around once he's there. Yo, isn't this Minister Cui? You've been promoted. Congratulations. When dealing with villains, one had to beat them while they were down. Li Zishuan wasn't willing to give up such an opportunity. He walked over to Cui Shanfu and cupped his hands with a smile. The officials turned to look in Li Zishuan's direction and saw Cui Shanfu's old face as black as the bottom of a pot. Oomph. The Marquis of Yong, and is taking pleasure in other people's misfortune. I'm afraid you've lost your status as a Marquis. At this point, Cui Shanfu felt that there was no need to pretend to be nice, so he snorted coldly at Li Zishuan. Li Zishuan was surprised and said, taking pleasure in other people's misfortune? Why would Minister Cui say that? This Marquis was clearly congratulating you on your promotion and wealth. All my colleagues here can testify for me. How can you slander me? Assistant Minister Wang, please be the judge. Was this Marquis taking pleasure in other people's misfortune? Li Zishuan pulled over an assistant minister from the Ministry of Rights and asked. That assistant minister of the Ministry of Rights had originally been doing well as an official in the capital. Inexplicably, he had been pulled in by Li Xiaogong. However, this fellow was also a smart person. He knew that on this trip to Lingnan, their fates were completely in Li Xiaogong's control. Furthermore, Li Xiaogong's relationship with Li Zishuan was probably known to everyone in Chang'an. How could he stand on the wrong side at this time? Cui Shanfu, Cui family, 5 surnames, and 7 hopes. No matter how big it was, could it be bigger than his own future? Assistant Minister Wang opened his mouth and pretended to be stunned. With an exaggerated expression, he said, Ayaya, Minister Cui, the Marquis of Yong, and is clearly congratulating you with good intentions. How can you not recognize his good intentions? As His Majesty's subjects, we have to share His Majesty's burdens. Although Lingnan is a barren land, if His Majesty wants us to go there, we have to serve His Majesty without hesitation. Being able to serve His Majesty is a blessing for us subjects. Therefore, we have indeed been promoted. Your attitude isn't right. My fellow colleagues, don't you think what I said is right? That's right. Going to Lingnan this time, we are serving His Majesty. It is indeed the same as being promoted. That's right, that's right. Minister Cui, what you said is wrong. What do you mean by gloating? We are going to Lingnan to serve His Majesty. Where's the talk of calamity? Assistant Minister Wang's words had just landed when the surrounding officials instantly began to denounce Cui Shanfu. This kind of matter was related to political standing. If they didn't know how to choose, then they had really lived for so many years in vain. Cui Shanfu's face instantly turned even darker. Shameless. Extremely shameless. A bunch of vile people who invert black and white. This old man disdains to be associated with you. Saying that, Cui Shanfu flung his sleeves and walked to the other side of the road. AI, Minister Cui, what you said is wrong. How are we shameless? That's right. That's right. Minister Cui, you are clearly flying into a rage out of humiliation. The officials weren't willing to be sinister, vile people and immediately began to stab Cui Shanfu. Every stab stabbed into his heart, making Cui Shanfu almost vomit blood. All right, everyone, get on your horses and catch up to the army. At this moment, Li Xiaogong roared. Everyone hurriedly acknowledged. Speaking of which, when it came to Lingnan, the sky was high and the emperor was far away. Li Shaogong held a large number of troops in his hands and represented the imperial court. Even the local emperors like Feng Ong and Tan Dian and Ling Nin had to be respectful to him. Therefore, these officials were truly obedient to Li Shaogong because their lives were all in Li Shaogong's hands. Although Cui Shanfu was unwilling, he didn't dare to say much. Presumably, he had resisted before, but later realized that resistance was futile. Now, he could only accept his fate. Little Xian, this prince will be leaving. Help me look after that stinking brat Huiran. If you need to beat him, beat him. Don't be courteous to this prince. Li Shaogong urged his horse to go to Li Zishuan's side and smiled. Li Zishuan cupped his fists and said, Your Highness, don't worry. I will keep an eye on Huiran. The mountain is high and the road is long. I wish your Highness a smooth journey. Li Shaogong laughed. I'll count on your auspicious words. But if there's an emergency at the Bureau of Shipping, you, as the right commissioner of the Bureau of Shipping, can't refuse. Li Zishuan hastily replied, I wouldn't dare. But then he suddenly remembered something and whispered, Your Highness, the Bureau of Shipping deals with an enormous amount of money every day. You must prevent the people below from being corrupted and forming factions. After saying this, he meaningfully glanced at Cui Shanfu's back. Li Shaogong's lips curled into a cold and profound smile. Don't worry about that. This king was worried that he wouldn't jump around. His Majesty has already made arrangements. Otherwise, how could one of the 9 ministers be moved by this king? Li Zishuan instantly understood. At this moment, he was completely at ease. Since Cui Shanfu had already been targeted by Li Er, he wouldn't be able to cause any waves in the Great Tang. For the rest of his life, he could only obediently live out his days. The moment he made a move, he wouldn't even need to do anything. Li Er would probably use this chance to eliminate him. The imperial treasury was now plentiful and had many soldiers and generals. Even the great clans weren't afraid. Moreover, Li Er had the time bomb Li Zishuan at his side to intimidate them. The great clans didn't dare to act rashly, because Li Zishuan was a true bomb. Feng Jidai had been able to see the clues in the overnight destruction of Snake Spirit Mountain. So how could those old foxes not see it? This was also why the Chui clan didn't dare to retaliate when the second young master of the Chui clan, Chui Yunhan, had been exiled to Cheongzhou because of Li Zishuan. This was because they were afraid that Li Zishuan would do the same thing to their clans as he had done to Snake Spirit Mountain. If that happened, who the hell would be able to bear it? Since your Highness and His Majesty have already made arrangements, then this little nephew won't say anything more. Once again, I wish your Highness a safe journey. Li Zishuan rubbed his nose and cupped his fists. Until we meet again. Hiya. Li Shaogong laughed out loud and spurred his horse to leave. Chapter 952. In the Sweet Dew Hall of the Imperial Palace. Shaogong's group should have left the city by now, right? Li Er softly asked from his throne. Your Majesty, His Highness has already left the city. Zhao Song bowed and replied. Li Er's eyes narrowed as he muttered. Whether or not the Great Tang's treasury can withstand the war with the Turks will depend on whether Shaogong's Bureau of Shipping can shoulder the burden. And also, the Chui clan, Cui Shanfu. Earlier, when Prime Minister Aluonazhan of the Jinri Dynasty wanted to marry the Great Tang Princess for King Jianri, Li Er was naturally unwilling. Changle was his most beloved daughter. How could he marry her off to a barbarian? But as the sovereign of a country, he could not let his emotions affect his decisions. Even if he was just going through the motions, he still had to listen to the opinions of his officials. In the end, Li Zishuan's bravery and righteousness had satisfied him, but Cui Shanfu supported the marriage of the Great Tang Princess and vigorously advocated for a peaceful marriage between the two countries. At that time, Li Er had wanted to kill Cui Shanfu, but he had never found a good opportunity. He had never imagined that Cui Shanfu's name would be on the list of officials selected to go to Lingnan that Li Shaogong had brought a few days ago. Logically speaking, Cui Shanfu, as an official of the Chamberlain of Dependencies and one of the 9 ministers, should not have been sent to Lingnan. But when Lier saw the name Chui Shanfu on the list, many thoughts flashed through his mind. And so, the final list of the Bureau of Shipping shocked everyone. After all, Chui Shanfu was not only an official of the Chamberlain of Dependencies, but also the successor of the Chui clan of Qinghe. Did Lier not take the great clans seriously by making such a decision? But on second thought, many people realized that Lier really did have the confidence to not take the great clan seriously. In the past, the great Tang did not lack good generals, nor did it lack elite soldiers, but it lacked money. If a war broke out, the great Tang's supply of provisions might run into problems. But now, the imperial court's treasury was abundant. It did not lack soldiers, generals, or provisions. If the great clans dared to be impudent, they would have to consider whether or not they could withstand Lier's thunderous strike. Would the great clans dare to be impudent? Of course not. Since Lier had dared to make this decision, it meant that he had already made preparations for the counterattack of the great clans. If the great clans made any strange movements, they might just be playing right into Lier's hands. After all, for Lier, stabilizing the rear before dealing with the Turks was not a bad choice. Because of this, East Commandery Duke Chui Junshuo, who had not been to court for decades, came to Ganlu Hall with a walking stick to plead for Chui Shanfu. Of course, Lier did not neglect, but he did not agree. In the end, he sent Chui Junshuo back with the reason that Chui Shanfu's trip to Lingnan is only temporary. Once the Department of Shipping is on the right track, he will be summoned back. Just like that, under Lier's strong insistence, the matter of Chui Shanfu, following Li Shaogong to the south, was completely settled. However, even Lier did not understand why Li Shaogong would write Chui Shanfu's name on the list. If one were to say that this old man was talented, there were many ministers in the imperial court who were more talented than him. No matter how one looked at it, it seemed that Li Shaogong had deliberately written Chui Shanfu's name. But what enmity did Li Shaogong have with Chui Shanfu? Lier was not too sure about this. Recently, pay more attention to the Chui family. If there are any strange movements, immediately report to me. A cold light flashed in Lier's eyes as he instructed in a deep voice. He was now really confident, because the Ministry of Works research on gunpowder had made great progress. If the great clans chose to make a strange move at this time, he did not mind giving them another round of justice from the heavens. Marquis, I have found the information you wanted. At night, in the study of the Marquis's residence in Yonglilane, Li Zishuan stood in front of the window with his hands behind his back. Pang Feiji cupped his fist behind him. Oh, tell me about it. Recently, he had not paid attention to the situation in the imperial court. After meeting Chui Shanfu on the road today, he had the heart to ask Pang Feiji to find out more information. Pang Feiji cupped his fists and reported, Marquis, according to my investigation, Chui Shanfu was in the first batch of officials selected by the regional prince to go to Lingnan City. Many people in the imperial court were against it, but I did not expect His Majesty to agree in the end. After that, the Chui family's ancestor, the East County Duke, personally went to the palace to plead for leniency, but it did not seem to have any effect. That is why Chui Shanfu went south with the regional prince today. Oh, I see. Li Zishuan suddenly understood and then asked doubtfully, but why did the royal prince want Chui Shanfu to go to Lingnan? He doesn't seem to have any enmity with Chui Shanfu, right? Pang Feiji's expression was a little unnatural as he said, This, I asked young Master Huiran. He said that the regional prince did not like Chui Shanfu for a long time, so did not like him? Li Zishuan was stunned. This reason was so strong and so willful. Well, I just don't like you and want to do you. What's wrong with that? People from the royal family are really awesome. In fact, Li Shaogong's dislike of Chui Shanfu mainly came from the time when the prime minister of the Jianri dynasty proposed marriage for King Jianri. When he saw Chui Shanfu shamelessly insist on marrying the Tang princess to a distant country, Li Shaogong felt as if his heart had been stabbed by a knife. He did not know why, But when he saw Cui Shanfu's face later, he felt that this old man wanted to marry his daughter to another country. Perhaps this is the fate of the heavens. In history, Li Xiaogong's daughter, Li Shuyan, was married to Tubo thousands of miles away because of a political marriage. Although she left behind the beautiful story of Princess Wenxiang came to Tubo, who knows the pain of the separation of father and daughter and the inability to see each other again. Marquis, I inadvertently found out a piece of news about young Master Huiran. Pang Feiji glanced at Li Zixuan cautiously and said in a low voice, "Oh, what news? Tell me." Li Zixuan's interest was piqued, and he quickly asked. Pang Feiji said, "According to the news I found out, young Master Huiran was very famous in the Nanyang area since he was young. He was even called the Fairy Child." Seeing that Li Zixuan was very interested, Pang Feiji continued, "It is said that young Master Huiran's mother had a dream during the day. She dreamed that a meteor entered her mouth and swallowed it. When she woke up, she was pregnant and gave birth to young Master Huiran 15 months later. This has become a legend in the area. When young Master Huiran was 7 years old, he accidentally drowned in the river and disappeared inexplicably. His uncle only found young Master Huiran's clothes by the riverbank. 3 years later, young Master Huiran returned home. His uncle asked him where he had been all these years, but young Master Huiran said, 'The fairy child led me to drink the cloud juice, so I did not leave any years.' Marquis, do you think this is amazing? Young Master Biao must have met a boy by the side of a deity." The more Li Zixuan listened, the deeper his frown became. In the end, he said with a straight face, "Don't talk about strange things. Just some hearsay, and you're scared to this extent. The monk is just a mortal. Don't talk nonsense. Get lost and go to sleep." "Yes, yes, yes. I will take my leave." Chapter 953. Your Majesty, this is the first batch of military binoculars developed by the Academy. Would you like to try it? On the afternoon of the second day, Mo Lingwei and Yin Shaoning were personally escorted by Mo Zhong and Mo Yun. They brought the binoculars to the home mansion and handed them to Li Zixuan. Since there was nothing to do in the afternoon, Li Zixuan brought the binoculars to the imperial palace. Li Er, who was in front of the dragon desk, was immediately energized. He quickly walked down and said, "So fast? Let me see." As soon as he finished speaking, he was already in front of Li Zixuan. Li Zixuan handed the binoculars to Li Er. Li Er took it and said in surprise, "So small? Can you see it clearly? Brat, are you cutting corners for me again?" He had personally played with the telescope in the academy before, but the one in his hand was only a little bigger than his palm. Compared to the big one in the academy, it was completely dwarfed. Li Zixuan said helplessly, "Your Majesty, you have wronged me. This kind of military binoculars is specially designed to spy on the enemy during war. Of course, it has to be portable. If it's too big, how can it be brought to the battlefield? Don't be fooled by its small size. Its ability is not much different from the Academy's telescope." "Is it?" Li Er did not believe it. He looked at the binoculars in his hand and said, "Follow me upstairs to take a look." After that, he took the lead and walked outside. Taiji Palace was the main palace of the Tang Empire, so it was also called the Inner Palace. It was usually the place where officials gathered. Of course, it was also Li Er's office. Taiji Palace occupied a large area, including Taiji Palace, Yin and Yang Palace, and Ganlu Palace. Taiji Palace was not a group of palaces on the first floor. It had a second floor. Li Zixuan and Zhao Song followed behind Li Er and came to the corridor on the second floor of the Taiji Palace. At this time, the sun had already set halfway down the mountain. Standing at their position, they could see the gorgeous red clouds on the horizon. The sky was dyed a deep red by the sunset glow, like a magnificent Red Sea. It was very spectacular. It was really, such a scene should only exist in the heavens. How many times can one see it in the human world? Li Er narrowed his eyes and looked at the magnificent sunset for a while. Then, he picked up the binoculars and held the binoculars in front of his eyes. In order to protect the lens, Mo Lingwei added rubber to the edge of the lens. Compared to the hard and cold iron frame, the soft rubber was undoubtedly more comfortable for the eyes. Li Er raised the lens and looked at the front. Suddenly, a head wearing armor appeared in his field of vision. He could even see the hair on the person's face clearly. Although Li Er had killed many people in his life, he couldn't help but be startled by the sudden appearance of a head. Li Zishuan could clearly see Li Er's wrist tremble slightly before returning to normal. "Your Majesty, how is it? The effect of this military binoculars isn't bad, right?" Li Zishuan laughed secretly, but asked softly, It's okay." After adapting to the ultra-long vision provided by the binoculars, Li Er was now using the binoculars to look for other sceneries. How could he have the time to comment on Li Zishuan? Therefore, he only gave a short reply and went back to playing. In fact, the effect of the binoculars was not only okay, it was simply too good. When Li Er was playing with the astronomical binoculars, he could see the moon and stars hundreds of thousands of miles away. Those stars were originally far away, so he didn't have much of an intuitive feeling about the magnification effect of the binoculars. But now it was different. Standing here, he could even see the appearance and clothing of the people on Vermilion Bird Avenue outside the Imperial City. It was exactly the same as the scene he couldn't see when he stood next to those people. This kind of intuitive visual impact shocked Li Er. For a moment, he was addicted to playing with it. "Ahem, Your Majesty, it's getting cold, you..." After a full quarter of an hour, Li Zishuan estimated that Li Er should have seen everything that could be seen from this angle. At this moment, a gust of cold wind blew from the west. Zhao Song could not help but let out 2 dry coughs. Li Er reluctantly put down the binoculars and said, "Let's go back to the Ganlu Palace." After a while, the 3 of them returned to the Ganlu Palace. Li Er looked at Li Zishuan with a face full of smiles and said, I'm very satisfied with this binoculars. Just based on this, my full support for you to establish Yanhuang College was not in vain. This binoculars was produced by the Qitiu Pavilion Workshop, right?" Li Zishuan replied, "Your Majesty, this binoculars was made by Yin Xiaoning and Mr. Mo's beloved daughter, Mo Lingwei. The workshop can now mass-produce them based on the technology they provided." Mo Lingwei? Li Er muttered once, then suddenly seemed to remember who Mo Lingwei was. He smiled and said, The idea of this binoculars was originally thought by you, right? You still want to use them to fool me?" Li Zishuan said helplessly, "Your Majesty, this was indeed the idea that I provided. However, the work after that was completed by Xiaoning and Ink Girl. The fact that this binoculars could be produced so quickly is due to the 2 of them." Li Er smiled and did not waste his breath on this issue. He paced 2 steps with his hands behind his back and said, "Your workshop will produce another batch of binoculars like this. Medicine Master and Jijia have mentioned this to me more than once." Li Zishuan nodded and said, Your Majesty, Your Majesty. However, how much does Your Majesty want?" After all, the production of this thing is extremely complicated and the materials are also extremely expensive. Li Er said with a toothache, "You brat, don't try to fool me. How would I not know that the most important part of this binoculars is the 4 pieces of colored glass? As for the colored glass in your workshop, it is all made from sand." Li Zishuan never expected Old Li to know so much. He quickly coughed dryly and said, "Your Majesty, don't think that the materials are cheap. However, the process is complicated. To turn a bag of sand into colored glass, it requires dozens of processes. To grind the colored glass into the lenses of the binoculars, the workshop's old craftsmen would have to grind it for several days. Furthermore, it might not even succeed. This is the cost." "Shut up. Then tell me, how much are you planning to sell this binoculars to me for?" Li Er said with a black face. Li Zishuan stretched out 5 fingers and carefully said, Your Majesty, I'll give you a friendly price. 500 strings of coins for one. How about that?" 500 strings of coins? Li Er stared and sneered. 500 strings of coins, you brat. Aren't you afraid of dying from overeating? At most 150 strings of coins. Get the workshop to make 50 for the imperial court as soon as possible. Don't try to bargain with me. This is my bottom line. Lisa Schwan said with a pained expression, Your Majesty, you are cutting my flesh. Sigh, fine. 150 strings of coins it is. Just treat it as my contribution to the great Tang Empire. Chapter 954. After finishing the deal for the binoculars, Lier sat back on the throne in satisfaction. He was very satisfied with this deal, and so was Lisa Schwan. The price of 500 strings of cash that he quoted to Lier was just a bluff. He had already expected Lier to bargain with him. Although the final price of 150 strings of cash was not high, it was not low either. The workshop could make a small profit from this deal. At this moment, Lier narrowed his eyes and looked at Lisa Schwan. He said, This binoculars is a national treasure. The technology used to make them must not be leaked. In order to prevent people from sneaking into the workshop, I will send a team of Imperial Guards to guard the workshop. Do you have any objections? Lier had fought in wars all his life. He understood the importance of binoculars in battle. Because of this, he knew better than anyone else that if the enemy had binoculars, it would be a great misfortune for the Tang army. That was why he was so concerned about the safety of the workshop. Lisa Schwan thought for a while and gritted his teeth. He said, I don't mind if your Majesty sends Imperial Guards to guard the workshop, but your Majesty's men are not allowed to interfere with the daily operations of the workshop. Otherwise, I would rather close the workshop. Lier narrowed his eyes, which flashed with a dangerous light. The hall immediately fell into silence. Zhao Song could not help but reveal an anxious expression as he silently blamed Lisa Schwan for daring to say anything. After a moment of silence, Lier suddenly slammed the table and stood up. He pointed at Lisa Schwan and said angrily, Bastard, do you think that I will swallow your workshop? Ridiculous. I have the wealth of the world. Do you think that I lack your workshop? In fact, he knew better than anyone what was most valuable about the workshop. It was Lisa Schwan's endless and amazing ideas. Without Lisa Schwan, the workshop was worthless. That was why he had never thought of swallowing the workshop and taking it for himself. I have misspoken. I hope that your Majesty can forgive me. When Lisa Schwan heard this, he heaved a sigh of relief and immediately cupped his hands in surrender. Although his words just now were suspicious of gauging the heart of a gentleman with one's own yardstick and might have even infuriated Lier, he had no regrets. There were some things that had to be made clear from the start. He did not want his workshop to be a tool for the imperial court to make money. His workshop was to represent the most advanced productivity of the Great Tang. Oomph. You brat, you're getting bolder and bolder. I will remember this and settle it with you in the future. Lier snorted coldly, venting the dissatisfaction in his heart. Then, he suddenly changed the topic and said, You know about Chui Shanfu, right? Lisa Schwan was suddenly confused. He didn't understand why Lier would suddenly mention this. Your Majesty, I happened to meet Chui Siqing outside the city yesterday. I didn't expect that Chui Siqing would follow Commander Prince Ajin to the south to serve the country after not seeing him for a month. I admire you very much. Lisa Schwan thought for a moment, then pretended to be confused and said in a strange tone. Lier widened his eyes and had the urge to curse. He secretly thought that this brat's mouth was getting more and more despicable. If Chui Shanfu heard this, he would probably be angered to death. However, he didn't know that Chui Shanfu was almost angered to death by Lisa Schwan outside the city. According to my investigation, the reason why the Nanyang envoys suddenly wanted to visit Yanhuang College last time was because of Chui Shanfu's instigation. He probably wanted to embarrass you in public. This person actually disregarded the imperial court's reputation because of personal grudges. He really deserves to be killed. If it weren't for the old commandery Prince Chui's face, I would definitely kill this person. What do you think? What do I think? Stand and watch, Lisa Schwan mischievously said in his heart. In fact, when he heard Lier say this, he was quite shocked. He didn't expect Lier to know about this matter. After thinking about it, he cupped his hands and replied with a serious face. Your Majesty, I think that the country is the country. Only when there is a country can there be a home. The country is first and the home is second. At any time, the country's interests are above everything else. Although I don't know how I offended Chui Siqing. Chui Siqing shouldn't have disregarded the Tang Empire's reputation to seek revenge on me. His intentions are truly deserving of death. Lier looked at Li Zishuan with a faint smile and nodded. Yes, so I sent him to Lingnan. I hope that he can properly reflect on himself. Your Majesty is wise. The ruler and the official chatted for a while more before Li Zishuan took his leave. Outside the palace, pedestrians hurried to and fro on Vermilion Bird Avenue. It seemed that they all wanted to rush home before the curfew. Li Zishuan rode on his horse and happened to meet an old acquaintance. Yo, Dr. Qin, you just came out from the Imperial Physician Bureau and are preparing to go home? That's right, it was the doctor from the Imperial Physician Bureau, Dr. Qin, who had attacked Snake Spirit Mountain with Li Zishuan and tested the poison with his own body. Hey, so it's Marquis. I've seen Marquis before. Marquis, how have you been recently? This old man has just been dismissed from the Imperial Physician Bureau and is about to go home. Dr. Qin hurriedly greeted with a smile. Li Zishuan dismounted and stood beside Dr. Qin. The two walked side by side. Li Zishuan said as he walked, Haha, Dr. Qin, we are people who have been on the battlefield together. There's no need for you to be so polite. I wouldn't dare. Dr. Qin shook his head and laughed. Li Zishuan rolled his eyes and suddenly said, Oh right, Dr. Qin, this Marquis intends to establish a medical school. In the next few years, I will establish public medical centers in all the states of the Tang Empire. The Academy's medical school will cultivate medical talents for these medical centers. Dr. Qin's medical skills are superb and your medical ethics are noble. I wonder if you can recommend some similar talents to this Marquis to fill up the Academy's medical faculty. Well, this was a rather old-fashioned way of recruiting people. You just had to wait for the willing to take the bait. Public medical centers? Marquis is indeed bold. I admire you, but I've been in the Imperial Physician Bureau for most of my life. I'm afraid that those friends of mine are no longer practicing medicine, right? Dr. Qin praised and then said regretfully. Li Zishuan smiled and said, Since there's no one else to recommend, Dr. Qin, why don't you come to Yanhuang College yourself? Don't you want to pass down your lifelong medical skills? Now that Priest Sun has a disciple, you... Dr. Qin said in surprise, Is Priest Sun also in Yanhuang College now? Li Zishuan smiled and said yes. And not only that, when the medical students officially enroll, Priest Sun will occasionally substitute for them. At this time, Sun Simiao was the idol of many medical students. Dr. Qin's eyes lit up when he heard this. He stroked his beard and said with a smile, Good. Since Priest Sun has already entered Yanhuang College, what's there for me to hesitate? Just as well, I'm getting old, and I'm planning to resign from the Ministry of Personnel in a few days. When the time comes, don't look down on my old bones. Li Zishuan smiled and said, Why would I? The Academy's doors will always be open to Dr. Qin. Chapter 955. Oh, I'm a little tired of eating fish and meat every day. I'll get the kitchen to buy more vegetables and fruits for a change of taste. On this day, Li Zishuan was eating lunch and subconsciously complained when he faced the table full of fish and meat. Although Han Yushi and the kitchen maid at home were very good at cooking, no matter how delicious they were, they couldn't rely on eating meat every day. Moreover, a healthy life required vegetables. These days of eating fish and meat every day had been going on for more than a month. Li Zishuan couldn't bear it anymore. Child, have you been too busy recently? It's already winter. Where do you want the servants to go to buy vegetables for you? You don't want to eat pickles. It's already good enough to have meat to eat. Mrs. Li knocked on the bowl. Her eyes were full of love and helplessness. Han Yushi also said yes. Husband, in this season, other than the warm soup bureau, there are vegetables and cold melons in other places. Husband, why don't you make do for a while? The so-called warm soup bureau was a department set up by the Tang Dynasty palace to cultivate off-season fruits and vegetables. Don't be surprised. Off-season fruits and vegetables were not the patent of modern people. Off-season fruits and vegetables had already appeared as early as the Qin and Han dynasties. Back then, Qin Shi Huang planned the burying of Confucianism incident because of this. According to the historical records, Qin Shi Huang secretly planted melons in the warm place of the mountain's Mausoleum Valley. The melons were ripe, and he ordered the scholars to say it. People said different things, so the order was different. In the end, these Confucian scholars didn't know the reason. After seeing that the melons were rare in winter, they were all killed. In the Han Dynasty, the royal vegetable base, Taiguan Garden, began to use the method of storing fire to grow off-season vegetables on a large scale. At that time, there was an official named Zhao Xinchen. He said that off-season vegetables were illegal food and couldn't be eaten. It would hurt people if they ate it. However, these words were obviously to fool people. His real purpose was to persuade the royal family not to be too extravagant. However, the Taiguan Garden, which produced and supplied off-season vegetables for the royal family, was not abolished during the Han Dynasty. In the Tang Dynasty, the Warm Soup Bureau replaced the Taiguan Garden and began to provide off-season vegetables for the royal family. However, the cultivation method of vegetables at this time was obviously more environmentally friendly. They provided heat to the vegetables through hot springs instead of storing fire. Warden of Warm Soup. After hearing what his mother and wife said, Li Zishuan finally remembered the era he was in. But when he heard about the Warm Soup Bureau, he subconsciously understood. After all, this guy had read a lot of Tang Dynasty novels in his previous life, so he knew what the Warm Soup Bureau was. Then I'll go back and ask Qin Ke for some vegetables. I'm sure he has some at home. Everyone was speechless. How could a teacher snatch food from a student? Li Zishuan's skin was really thick to the extreme. Cough, cough. Actually, this fellow also wanted to get his own greenhouse vegetables, but distant water could not quench his immediate thirst. He would first get some vegetables from Li Tai to quench his thirst. As for the greenhouse vegetables, he would also get them. Put it here, put it here. You guys, go to the front yard and help me move those brackets in. Li Zishuan was never careless when it came to his diet. In the afternoon, he asked someone to buy a batch of materials and planned to build a greenhouse in his yard. Young master, why do you need so many oilcloth and wood? Xiao He looked at the open space in the yard, which was full of coarse cloth and wooden sticks, and couldn't help but wonder. Li Zishuan smiled. Hee, I'm going to build a house. Build a house? Young master, why do you want to build a house? Isn't the house enough for us to live in? Xiao He was even more puzzled. You'll know when the time comes. Li Zishuan didn't explain much and ordered the servants to start building the house. First, in an open space in the west courtyard, according to the length and width of the greenhouse that was designed in advance, the four corners of the greenhouse were determined. After making the four corners at right angles with the law of the Pythagorean string, positioning piles were placed and positioning lines were drawn between the piles. Then, the foundation of the bamboo frame was leveled and compacted along the lines. Then, he let the servants use shovels to flatten the ground, followed by drilling holes and inserting wooden supports into the ground. In a short period of time, the sound of pile driving in the west courtyard resounded throughout the entire Li residence. Such a big movement naturally alarmed Li Jingma, Madame Li, and the Yi family. Xianer, what are you doing? Although Father Li had already retired and didn't care about the family's affairs, he couldn't help but frown when he saw his son destroying the house's courtyard. Li Zishuan saw that the main members of the family were basically all present and understood that his movement was too big. He suddenly felt a little embarrassed. Father, I'm planning to build a house specially used to grow vegetables in the winter. When the time comes, if our family wants to eat vegetables, we don't have to beg others. Build a house? Grow vegetables? Li Jingma's eyes widened, and then he scolded with a straight face. Nonsense. I've lived for so long, and I've never heard of growing vegetables in a house. You've been following your master since you were young, and you've never been involved in farming. Now you're actually doing such a ridiculous thing. It's simply wishful thinking. If this gets out, it'll be a joke. Li Zishuan wasn't convinced. Father, You haven't tried it. How do you know this method won't work? Besides, it's not like no one has ever tried growing vegetables in the winter. Can't you just do it in the hot spring department? Li Jingma said angrily. There's a hot spring in the hot spring department to keep it warm all year round. How can it be the same? Stop fooling around and get them to remove these things as soon as possible. In fact, if it were any other time, Li Zishuan could do whatever he wanted at home. But now Yi Guozhong and the others were still living in the Li family. When Li Jingma saw his son fooling around like this, he felt a little embarrassed. If he didn't do it well, he would be reprimanded by his father-in-law again. Li Zishuan didn't have as many twists and turns as his father. He waved his hand and motioned for the servants who had stopped next to him to continue working. Then he turned to Li Jingma and said, "Father, since you don't believe me, let's make a bet. If I grow vegetables in this house, will you eat them or not?" How could Li Jingma believe Li Zishuan's nonsense? He stroked his beard and said proudly, "Humph, don't try to deceive me. If you can grow vegetables in the winter, I won't eat a single one, even if I starve to death." "Humph, you old man have nothing better to do. Why are you being so serious with your son? When your son really grows vegetables, I'll see if you'll eat them or not." Mrs. Li, who was next to them, couldn't help but roll her eyes when she saw that the old man and the young man were actually betting. In her opinion, although her son's actions seemed ridiculous, countless facts in the past had proven that her son was always right. Chapter 956. Madam, I'm not being serious. Why don't you ask your parents-in-law if they've ever heard of planting vegetables in a house? Madam Li's words were obviously biased. Li Jingma was immediately dissatisfied. Speaking of which, he could be considered an official now. Why was his status in the family still so low? This was intolerable. Yi Guozhong saw that Li Jingma had turned the topic to him. He thought for a moment and said, "It didn't exist in the past, but it doesn't mean it won't exist in the future. Little Xian has been good at creating miracles in the past year, since he returned to Chang'an. Jingma, as his father, how can you not believe in your own son?" It was rare for Yi Guozhong to actually speak up for Li Zishuan. Old Madame Yi smiled and said, "Old master is right. Little Xian doesn't look like someone who would boast casually. Jingma, if you speak so confidently now, you'll have to starve in the future." Old Madame Ye's words immediately made everyone laugh. Lana clapped and said, "Hee, Daddy's going to starve. But Daddy, don't worry. Lana will send you food when the time comes." "Send food? Your father, I am not going to jail. Do I need a little girl like you to send me food?" Li Jingma's old face darkened. Everyone laughed again. While they were talking, 2 rows of wooden sticks of the same height were inserted into the ground in the courtyard. The top of the 2 sticks was supported by a curved bamboo strip. It really looked like the frame of a house. Li Zishuan didn't have time to chat with his father at this time. He personally went down and ordered the servants to tie the custom-made white tarpaulins one by one to the supports. There was no plastic in this era. Li Zishuan thought about it and could only use tarpaulins instead. Although it was white tarpaulins, how could they remain white after being soaked in Tang oil? It looked dark yellow, but even so, it was much better than black. After all, black tarpaulins absorbed light and didn't transmit light. It was not conducive to the growth of vegetables. These tarpaulins were specially made by Li Zishuan. There were 2 lengths of rope attached to them at specific intervals, which were used to tie them to the brackets that were inserted in advance. The winter in the north was especially cold. To be safe, 1 layer of tarpaulin was not enough to solve the problem. Li Zishuan made the greenhouse into a structure with 2 layers of tarpaulin. This way, the greenhouse would be even more insulated. Of course, in addition to this, Li Zishuan also prepared a thermal insulation plan, which was the natural heating method. The so-called natural heating was not an increase in temperature for no reason, but the effect of a mysterious substance, which was the fermentation agent. The specific method is, when preparing the ground, making beds, or making seed beds, the soil is filled with cow dung, pig dung, fresh garbage, manure, and crushed straws and straws. Then appropriate amount of wheat koji or xiaoziu is added to make fermenting agent, and finally the soil of the vegetable garden is filled so that the microorganisms in the fermenting agent can use the raw materials to work. These raw materials can slowly release heat, gradually increasing the temperature of the soil and the air to ensure the normal growth of the plants. Although Li Zishuan had never farmed in this life, don't forget that he was born into a farmer's family in his previous life. At that time, his family had built a greenhouse, and at that time, they used this method of releasing heat through fermentation to ensure the greenhouse's temperature. Reality proved that the effect was quite good. However, the fermenting agent they used at that time was also an industrial fermenting agent, so the effect might be slightly better than wheat koji or xiaoqiu. More than 20 servants used more than 2 hours to build the greenhouse that was less than half a mu in size. It was the first time Lan saw such a long house, and she was extremely excited. The little girl shuttled back and forth in the greenhouse, not knowing the meaning of tiredness. She cannot be dragged out, as if she wanted to make this her new home. However, when Sam Bao came in with a load of dung, the little girl ran out at her fastest speed without needing anyone to say anything. "Stinky Sam Bao, why did you bring 2 buckets of dung over for no reason?" "Ah, it stinks, you're so disgusting." Lan covered her nose and scolded as she ran. "Miss, I, young master asked me to." Sam Bao looked wronged. Actually, he did not want to pick such smelly things. Wasn't it Li Zishuan's request? "All right, Sam Bao, quickly get someone to evenly fill the fields with horse and cow dung. Then sprinkle wheat koji over it. Then plant the seeds of water spinach, coal melon, leeks, and shepherd's purse." Li Zishuan interrupted Sam Bao and ordered. Speaking of which, the excrement was not ordinary excrement, but fresh horse and cow excrement. It was not easy to obtain such excrement. Dozens of servants and Pang Feiji's personal guards went out together and took away almost all the cow and horse excrement in the mansions of every household in Chang'an. The reason why they used cow and horse dung instead of human dung was mainly because cows and horses were herbivores. Their dung contained undigested residues, which were easier to ferment. Moreover, the fermented products were better for the vegetables. "All right, young master," Sam Bao responded and led the other servants to work in full swing. In an instant, the west courtyard was filled with the stench. Li Jingma, Madame Li, Yi Guozhong, and the rest could not stay any longer. They hurried out of the west courtyard. Although Li Zishuan could hold his breath and was not afraid of the stench, his wife, Han Yushi, was afraid. Hence, he also pulled Han Yushi out. "Cousin, are you really confident that you can grow vegetables in this house?" Yi Fashion followed behind and asked Li Zishuan. Li Zishuan smiled confidently and said, "Of course. If nothing goes wrong, Fashion, you should be able to eat the vegetables here during the new year." "Huh, you won't be able to eat these fresh things during the new year at Nanyang." "It's all thanks to you, cousin." Yi Fashion smiled and said. Then he continued to ask, "Planting in the spring and harvesting in the autumn is the way of the heavens. Cousin, aren't you going against the heavens by planting vegetables in the winter?" Li Zishuan looked at the unlucky child and said in a speechless manner, Fine. There's no need for so many rules. Your cousin just wants to eat some of the vegetables he grew. How is that against the heavens?" "Fashion, don't be so rigid all the time. It's life. If you want to live a good life, you have to. Tui, you can't be so calculative. Think about it yourself." After that, he patted Yi Fashion's shoulder and turned to Han Yushi and said, "My wife, I'm going back to Yinshan later. Do you want to come along?" Han Yushi thought for a while and nodded. I'll go too. Who knows, I might be able to help you." Li Zishuan smiled and said, "All right, I'll get someone to prepare the carriage." Chapter 9:57. Around 5 p.m., Li Zishuan and Han Yushi arrived at Yun Mountain in a carriage with a large group of servants. The carriage was filled with oilcloth and wood. They were planning to grow vegetables in greenhouses in Yun Mountain. Speaking of which, more than 90% of the roads in Cloud Mountain had been repaired. This greatly reduced the travel time. In the past, it would take more than an hour for a carriage to travel this long path. Now, it would only take a little more than 15 minutes. More importantly, the road was wide. In the past, if two carriages wanted to stagger, they had to be careful for fear of bumping into each other. Now, the cement road was wide enough to accommodate 4 carriages side by side. Compared to this, the official road outside the city was like a small road. Sanbao, bring them here and build me a greenhouse that is exactly the same as the one in the residence. I have something to do outside. Li Zishuan said to Sanbao as he marked out an empty space behind the courtyard. In this era, there were no strict management methods for abandoned land like in a modern era. Usually, the land would belong to whoever developed it. Besides, Yanwan College was built on Yun Mountain. The entire mountain was basically Li Zishuan's private territory. He could plant wherever he wanted. Yes, young master. Don't worry and go. Sanbao took on the responsibility without hesitation. As Li Zishuan's #1 henchman, this was a piece of cake for him. Li Zishuan nodded and left with his wife. He wanted to go to his father-in-law's house. He wasn't going to monopolize the vegetables in the greenhouses. Planting vegetables was just for fun and to satisfy his appetite. He didn't plan to use it to make money. However, it was a good idea to let the villagers in his fief take care of it. As for Han Tianhu, due to his relationship with Li Zishuan, he was now the head of one of the 8 villages in Li Zishuan's fief. The Han family manor's position among the 8 villages was skyrocketing. Only Plum Village, which was close to Yin Mountain, could compete with them. The other 6 villages were envious of these 2 villages. However, their villages were now part of Li Zishuan's fief. As long as they followed Li Zishuan's footsteps, their good days wouldn't be far away. Previously, when Li Zishuan mobilized the villagers to gather herbs in the mountains, the villagers were unusually enthusiastic. If there wasn't a quota, they would have brought their entire families into the mountains. It's Marquis. Hello, Marquis. Greetings, Marquis. Since Cloud Mountain wasn't far from Plum Village, Li Zishuan didn't choose to take a carriage. The couple hadn't gone far when they saw a group of villagers carrying bamboo baskets on their backs, heading towards the 3rd courtyard in an endless stream. When the villagers saw Li Zishuan, they stopped in their tracks and bowed. Their faces were filled with excitement. Yes, you're going to look for Dr. Sun? Some of them were familiar to Li Zishuan, while others were unfamiliar. However, when he saw the herbs in their bamboo baskets, Li Zishuan guessed that they were here to sell herbs. Yes, Marquis, we're all going to Dr. Sun to sell herbs. Why don't you go to the pharmacy in Chang'an City to sell? Li Zishuan asked with a smile. When he decided to set up a school hospital in the academy, he put a sum of money in Sun Simiao's place for him to purchase herbs. The purchase price of herbs here wasn't much better than the big pharmacies in Chang'an City. Some herbs were even cheaper than the ones in Chang'an City. The main reason was that Sun Simiao didn't think it was worth the money. This old man had always been frugal. Otherwise, he wouldn't have collected herbs himself to treat patients. When the man heard this, his face suddenly changed. He straightened his neck and said, Marquis is kind-hearted. He pointed out a way for us to make money. Why would we do such a treacherous thing? Wouldn't that be like being criticized behind our backs? An old man next to him also said, Xuanzi is right. Marquis, you're kind-hearted. Besides, Dr. Sun doesn't charge for treating the poor. The herbs we collect don't cost anything. It's just a little effort. Even if Dr. Sun doesn't pay us, we have no reason to give these herbs away. Yes, who knows, these herbs might even be used by divine Dr. Sun on us in the end. Yes, although we're poor, we can't let others criticize us behind our backs. The old man's words immediately gained the approval of many people. Li Zishuan's kindness to the people of his fief and Sun Simiao's kindness to the poor had been widely spread in the area near Chang'an City. People's hearts were made of flesh. In the face of good people like Li Zishuan and Sun Simiao, how could they only recognize money and not care about feelings? It had to be said that the feelings of kindness in this era were quite strong. If this situation was in modern times, it would be hard to say. Han Yushi looked at Li Zishuan, her heart full of love. She was happy that her husband had won the hearts of the people. Li Zishuan patted the man's arm and said, "Haha, good. I appreciate your kindness." Since you are now the people of my fief, I will definitely take you to live a good life. Marquis is righteous. Marquis is mighty. The people had been looking forward to this promise in their hearts. Now that they finally heard Li Zishuan say it personally, they were suddenly very excited and shouted. Li Zishuan smiled and chatted with the people around him. Then, he took Han Yushi down the mountain. The villagers didn't go into the mountains to pick herbs every day. Now, the unified arrangement of the villages was to organize a group to go into the mountains every other day. Therefore, when Li Zishuan and his wife arrived at the Han village, Han Lijing didn't go out. Instead, he was playing chess with Old Hu in the courtyard. It was the slack period now. If Li Zishuan hadn't arranged a job to go into the mountains to pick herbs, Han Lijing would probably be even more free now. At this moment, the two bad chess players were happily playing chess on the stone table in the courtyard. Father-in-law, Han Yushi and Li Zishuan entered the courtyard. The two of them called out one after the other. Yo, Yushi, Xiaoxian, you're back. Han Lijing heard and quickly stood up. His face was full of warmth. Old Hu also put down the chess piece in his hand and stood up with a smile. Hey, Han girl, young master, you're here. He didn't call Marquis, nor did he call Marquis madam. However, this kind of address made Li Zishuan and Han Yushi feel very close. Yes, Uncle Hu, you're playing chess. Li Zishuan smiled. Old Hu patted his head and said resentfully, Hey, I was about to win just now. All right, Lijing, you lost this round. Chapter 958. Father-in-law, Uncle Hu, how is the west side of Yinshan? Did you encounter any danger yesterday? After exchanging greetings for a while, the four of them sat around the stone table. Han Yushi brought 4 cups of water from inside the house. Li Zishuan took a sip and looked at Han Lijing and Hu Hanyan. Han Lijing smiled and said, We didn't encounter any danger. There were so many of us. No matter how strong the beasts were, they would be scared away. We didn't even encounter a tiger. Hu Hanyan interrupted. That's right, it was so boring. I remember that there were many tigers in the west side of the mountain in the early years. Yesterday, I was planning to hunt one back and use its skin as a mattress on my bed. In the end, we didn't even find a tiger's hair after searching for half a day. How infuriating. In the modern era, using tiger skin as mattresses was usually done by the rich. That was because tigers were protected by the country and were rare, so tiger skin was naturally even rarer. But in this era, even a farmer like Old Hu had a tiger skin, let alone a real rich family. Li Zishuan looked at Hu Hanyun and couldn't help but say, Uncle Hu, it's a good thing that there are no beasts. At least there won't be any casualties, but we can't let our guard down. Father-in-law, even if we don't encounter any beasts in the future, we must have a group of young men accompanying us every time. Otherwise, we can't let farmers go into the mountains to pick herbs without permission. Many times, danger happens when people are not paying attention. Han Lijing stroked his beard and nodded in agreement. Yes, Xiaoxian, don't worry. I will arrange it well. By the way, apart from this matter, this son-in-law has something else to tell father-in-law. Li Zishuan changed the topic and said, Hey, young master, I have something to do at home, so I'll leave first. Although Hu Hanyan looked rough, his heart was not rough at all. He realized that what Li Zishuan was going to say to Han Lijing next might not be suitable for him to hear. So he quickly got up and took the initiative to leave. Hey, Uncle Hu, it's not a secret anyway, and it's also related to you. Sit down. Li Zishuan knew what Old Hu was thinking, so he quickly dissuaded him. Hee. Then I Old Hu will listen. When Hu Hanyun heard this, he laughed awkwardly and sat down again. Li Zishuan then told him about his plan to popularize greenhouses and use this method to cultivate vegetables in winter. When Han Lijing heard this, his eyes widened. He said in disbelief, Little Xian, is this method of yours really feasible? This old man has lived for so long, but I've never heard of anyone growing vegetables in their house. Before Li Zishuan could say anything, Hu Hanyan interrupted. Hey, Li Zheng, it's not right for you to ask this question. Since the first time young master came to our manor at the beginning of the year, When has he ever said anything wrong? From what I old who see, although this method sounds unlikely, but since young master said it, then it will definitely work. Li Zishuan waved his hand and laughed. Ha ha. Uncle Hu, don't praise me. How can I be as amazing as you say? Coincidentally, I've just built a vegetable shed in the side yard. Father-in-law, Uncle Hu, why don't you come with me to take a look and learn how to build it and cultivate it? Later on, you can teach the other farmers in our manor who are willing to learn. When the vegetables are ripe, it will bring a decent amount of income for the farmers, right? Good, good, good. Han Lijing said excitedly, Little Xian, this is not just a decent amount of income. It's simply a huge amount of income. You might not know how precious vegetables are during winter in Chang'an City. This is truly a priceless commodity. If this method of yours really works, then the few manors around our Han Manor will really make a killing this time. That's right, that's right. Young master, you really have a lot of ideas. The farmers in our manor must have cultivated good karma in their previous lives to be able to look forward to your arrival. Old Hu laughed heartily. Han Lijing didn't even lock the door and followed Li Zishuan up Cloud Mountain with Hu Hanyan. Although the security wasn't so good that Tu Bu couldn't pick up his belongings, with the villagers around to look after them, Han Lijing wasn't worried at all that his belongings would be stolen. The four of them hurried along and arrived at Cloud Mountain's first courtyard in a little more than 15 minutes. At this time, a dark yellow tarpaulin shed about 10 feet long and 10 feet wide was revealed in front of them. San Bao and the servants were in the midst of finishing up the work. Young master, you're back? This place will be ready soon. Please wait a moment. San Bao saw that Li Zishuan had returned so quickly and quickly came over to inform him. Li Zishuan waved his hand and laughed. Ha, no rush. San Bao, you did well. San Bao immediately grinned. He, it's all because you taught me well. Li Zishuan smiled and turned to Han Lijing and Hu Hanyan, father-in-law. Uncle Hu, this is the shed I told you about just now. It's specially used to grow vegetables in winter. This shed is covered with 2 layers of tarpaulin. I'll add some fertilizer inside. When the time comes when the door is closed, no matter how cold it is outside, it'll still be warm inside. Why would the soup bureau provide vegetables to the royal family in winter? Isn't it because it's warm there? If we use this, we'll most likely be able to achieve the same effect. Han Lijing's eyes lit up and he nodded. Xiao Xian, after hearing what you said, this method is quite promising. Perhaps we can really try it out. After saying that, he immediately frowned and hesitated, but with so many tarpaulins added together, I'm afraid it won't be cheap. I just don't know if the farmers will dare to take this risk. What Han Lijing said was true. After all, Li Zishuan's method of growing vegetables out of season had never been tried before. The capital invested in the early stage was not a small amount for the farmers. It would depend on whether the farmers believed in Li Zishuan or not. Hu Hanyun waved his hand carelessly and said, Hey, those who aren't willing don't have the life to earn this money. Lijing, no matter how much you force them, it's useless. Anyway, I old who believe in young master. I'll go to Chang'an tomorrow to buy tarpaulins. My family will build 10 of these big sheds. Anyway, there's a lot of land that's uncultivated now. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that old who had been reborn. His son and daughter both had their own achievements. Now, not only were they no longer the burden of the family, but they had also become the pride of the family and even the entire Han family manor. Because of this, the Hu family was getting richer and richer. At this moment, old Hu seemed to be rich and overbearing. He directly said that he wanted to build 10 of these sheds. But sometimes, honest people also had their blessings. It wouldn't be long before Hu Hanyun would be thankful for his current decision. Father-in-law, Uncle Hu's words are rough, but they are reasonable. When the time comes, the farmers will be free to build the sheds. If they don't want to, we won't force them. Chapter 9:59. Little Xian, you can't do this. In the Yinshan residence, Han Lijing listened to Li Zishuan and Hu Hanyun's conversation and quickly said, Little Xian, you might not know the situation of the other villages. Take the Liujia village, for example. Their village just joined your fief, not long ago. During the previous autumn harvest, they still paid rent according to the previous landlord's request. In addition, this year's harvest is generally not good, making things worse. Their place is not rich to begin with. It's already not bad that they have enough food to eat. If you ask them to get so many oilcloths, even if they sell all the food in their house, it won't be enough. Little Xian, since you've thought of this method to help the villagers increase their income, then you must also want all the villagers to receive this favor, right? Therefore, father-in-law still hopes that you can consider this matter carefully. After Li Zishuan heard this, he was silent for a while. He secretly thought that he had taken things for granted. The price of cloth in the beginning of the Tang Dynasty was very cheap. The price of a spool of fine silk was the price of a bucket of rice. That is, 3 to 4 copper coins could buy a spool of silk cloth. As for the coarse oilcloths used to build the greenhouses, it was even cheaper. The cost of a greenhouse was actually only 2 to 300 copper coins. Li Zishuan's family had a ready-made clothing store, so he naturally knew the current price of cloth in Chang. It was because he knew that he subconsciously thought that the commoners could grit their teeth and bear the cost of a greenhouse. 2 to 300 copper coins was equivalent to a few $1,000s in the modern era. If a family squeezed together, they should be able to gather together. But he neglected a problem. The extent of exploitation of the farmers by the landlords of this era was far from comparable to the modern era. In this era, people who could not afford to eat enough and where clothes were everywhere. Was 2 to 300 copper coins really a small amount? For some families, 2 to 300 copper coins could be enough for their family to eat for a year. Father-in-law is right. This son-in-law has indeed not thought it through. Li Zishuan thought for a moment and took the initiative to admit his mistake. He continued, "How about this? This son-in-law will take out 1,000 strings of money and leave it with father-in-law. If the villagers are willing to build greenhouses and have difficulties at home, they can come to you to borrow a sum of money. Each family can borrow at most 500 copper coins. They don't need to pay interest as long as they can repay the principal within a year. Father-in-law, what do you think about this?" Capital loans were not unique to modern times. In ancient times, this was not a new thing at all. The reason why Meng Changjun, one of the 4 young masters of the Warring States period, was able to raise 3,000 retainers and recruit talents from all walks of life was because of the business of lending money and collecting interest. According to historical records, there was a year when Xue Di failed to pay interest. Meng Changjun sent people to collect interest, but they still received an interest of 100,000. It could be seen that the scale of lending money was very large. Compared to that, Li Zishuan was not lending money at all. He was doing a good deed. After all, he did not charge any interest. Han Lijing said with a smile, "That's great. In this way, little Xian, you are truly working for the well-being of the common people." "Hey, young master, you are so kind. The banks in Chang and city lend money to people, and they ask for 10% interest every month," Old Hu said with a grin. To be honest, he was a little tempted by this preferential offer. Regarding private lending, the Qin and Han dynasties was the first time in China's history that usury was at its peak. After the Tang Dynasty, private lending developed even more rapidly. Various banks and pawn shops were set up in Shi City. Hence, it became the earliest financial street in China. Of course, in order to suppress usury, the imperial court also imposed many restrictions on private lending. There were clear records that the legal interest rate during this time was 10% per month and 120% per year. Compared to the interest rate during the Qin and Han dynasties, this interest rate was more friendly. However, to the common people, this interest rate was still relatively high. Hence, when Old Hu heard that Li Zishuan wanted to lend money to the villagers without paying interest, he could not help but be tempted. After all, if he borrowed money from the banks, he would have to pay back 600 in interest a year later. In this way, borrowing money was profiting. Li Zishuan smiled and changed the topic. "Uncle Hu, father-in-law, take a closer look at this greenhouse. If there is anything you don't understand, you can ask me. In the next few days, this greenhouse will be promoted to all the villagers. When the time comes, I will have to trouble you. Han Lijing nodded and said, "Okay, old Hu and I will take a closer look." Although he and Hu Hanyin had an unruly time when they were young, later on, they obediently stayed at home and farmed. They could be considered as genuine farmers. Imitating others to grow vegetables was a piece of cake for them. The next day, old Hu went out early in the morning. Today, he did not follow the village's young men into the mountains as a guard. He had more important things to do, and that was to buy cloth. There was no ready-made oilcloth, so he bought coarse cloth and then some Tang oil and went home to make it himself. When he went there, it was an empty ox cart. When he came back, it was full of coarse cloth, and there were 2 barrels of Tang oil hanging on the side of the cart. "Yo, isn't this old, Hu? Why did you buy so much cloth? Are you making clothes for your son? That's not right. Why didn't you buy silk cloth but so much coarse cloth?" On the way, it was inevitable that he would meet some acquaintances. Old Hu usually laughed and said carelessly, "Ha, recently, the family is short of firewood, so I bought some coarse cloth to burn at home." If it wasn't someone from the village, Old Hu was determined not to reveal the secret of growing vegetables in the greenhouse. It was just that his response was a little too shocking. Buying coarse cloth to burn as firewood? Hearing Old Hu's response, people all suspected that Old Hu's brain was fried. Although the situation of Old Hu's family was much better this year, it was not to the point of being extravagant enough to burn coarse cloth as firewood. Right? "My son's mother, I'm back. Come out and help me carry the things." The road from the Chang, an official road to the Han village, was now flat and wide. After a while, Old Hu returned home. As soon as he entered the courtyard, he shouted at the top of his voice, "Hey, master, you're back so soon?" When Lu Yu heard the noise, she hurriedly ran out of the house. When she saw the mountain of coarse cloth on the ox cart, she was stunned. This, husband, how much did you buy these cloth for?" Hu Hanyun wiped away his sweat and said with a grin, "Hey, it's only 3 strings of coins worth of cloth. The shopkeeper said that if I bought more, he would give me more, so I bought more. It's not a loss, not a loss." "It's not a loss? What did you say when you left? You only bought 2 strings of coins worth of cloth. Now that you've bought such a big cart, what are you going to do with the extra cloth?" Lu Yue said angrily. "Do what? Burn? Bah, I'm going to grow vegetables." Old Hu answered this question too many times along the way, so he couldn't help but say that word directly. Chapter 960. Hearing Hu Hanyun say burn, Lu Yu was so angry that smoke almost came out of her head. "Husband, we built so many greenhouses. What if we lose money? After all, growing vegetables in winter doesn't sound very reliable." Hu Hanyun glanced at his wife and said in annoyance, "What does a woman like you know? Young master is the son of a god. How can he be wrong? If it weren't for young master, we would still be living in this rundown house. We would still be cooped up at home with them. You don't have to believe other people, but you have to believe everything young master says." Although Lu Yu liked to take advantage of others, she wasn't someone who didn't know what was good for her. In this kind of situation, she was still able to distinguish between right and wrong. "Understood, husband," Hu Hanyun said with satisfaction. "Take down these coarse cloths and dip them in Tang oil to dry. I'll go to the mountains to chop some wood. We'll go build the greenhouses in the afternoon." Lu Yu agreed and said, "Then, husband, go quickly and come back quickly." "Okay." At the same time, the news of Li Zishuan's intention to promote greenhouses to grow vegetables began to spread among the 8 villages. Of course, what was more attractive was Li Zishuan's interest-free loan, which ignited the hope of many poor people. "Wife, tie up the old hen at home. I'll bring it to the Han village later and borrow 500 copper coins from Han Lijing. Our family also wants to follow Marquis and build greenhouses." In a dilapidated courtyard in the Liujia village, a middle-aged man with dark skin and a thin figure suddenly seemed to have made up his mind. He stood up abruptly and said to the house, Husband, you're going to borrow so much? What if we can't pay it back when the time comes?" A woman in coarse clothes walked out of the house and said anxiously. The man gritted his teeth and said, "We have to pay it back. When the time comes, we'll definitely be able to pay it back. Why, think about it. As long as we can use these greenhouses to grow vegetables, let alone 500 copper coins, we'll have a few thousand copper coins. You know old Hu from the Han village, right? It was said that his son was cured by Marquis, who knew that he would be admitted to Yin Huang College a few months ago. He was really lucky. Our Huzi isn't young anymore. I have to hurry up and get him a package so that he can go to school to learn something. If he can also get into Marquis' Yin Huang College in 2 years, then our family's ancestral graves will be smoking. In ancient times, it was a kind of gift given to each other by superiors and subordinates, relatives and friends. In ancient times, when students and teachers met for the first time, they would first present gifts as a sign of respect. This was known as a gift. It had already been implemented during the time of Confucius. In the Tang Dynasty, schools still used the ceremony of paying tuition, but many poor families could not afford to pay tuition, so naturally, they did not have the life to study. The woman hesitated and said, But husband, what if Marquis' method doesn't work and we can't grow vegetables?" In fact, this woman's thoughts represented the thoughts of a considerable number of people. Most of the farmers who were still hesitating were not sure whether Li Zishuan's method could grow vegetables in winter. The man was suddenly speechless. After a while, he stamped his feet and said, "It definitely can. Since Marquis dares to promote this method to us, then he must have confidence. You didn't see how rich the Han village and Plum village are now. That's all because of Marquis' help. Besides, if we really can't grow vegetables and can't pay back the money, then I'll sell my life to Marquis to repay the debt." After saying that, he resolutely turned around and walked out of the courtyard. His steps were so firm, and his back was so bleak. However, hey, husband, you forgot to take the chicken. Do you still want the old hen at home? Chang and City, Yongle Lane, Li Mansion. After Li Zishuan finished his business in Yunshan yesterday, he came back directly. His father-in-law was in charge of the farm, and Li Gang and Yin Silu were in charge of the academy. He was very comfortable as a hands-off boss. "Xiao Xian, I heard that you want to let the people in your fief grow vegetables with you?" When it was almost noon, Yi Guozhong found Li Zishuan and asked. Li Zishuan nodded and said, "Yes, grandfather." Yi Guozhong frowned and said, "Are you 100% sure that this method will work? You have to know that the people are not rich. If they can't grow vegetables, you'll be doing bad things with good intentions." In the end, this old man was still worried that Li Zishuan's good reputation, which he had painstakingly built, would be ruined because of a greenhouse. At the same time, the people who followed Li Zishuan to grow vegetables in the greenhouse would also be ruined. "Grandfather, don't worry. I tested this method of growing vegetables with my master when I was at Mount Longhu. As long as it's done properly, we'll definitely be able to grow vegetables." Li Zishuan didn't want to keep talking nonsense, so he directly brought out his omnipotent master. When Yi Guozhong heard this, he was suddenly speechless. As a cultivation family, Yi family was certainly clear about spiritual master Lingshu's magical power and his status in Taoism. Since these greenhouse vegetables have been verified by spiritual master Lingshu, what else could he say? A kind-hearted person will be rewarded with good fortune. A family that accumulates kindness will have more to celebrate. Xiao Xian, you have to always remember this. People follow the laws of the earth follows the laws of the heaven follows the laws of the Tao, and the Tao follows the laws of nature. Taoism emphasizes karma. Your good deeds today will definitely be rewarded with good results. Grandfather is very pleased to see that you treat the people in your fief so well. Yi Guozhong came over and patted Li Zishuan's shoulder and said with deep meaning. Old man Ye's words could be said to Li Zishuan's heart. Li Zishuan cupped his hands and said, "Grandfather, you flatter me." After lunch, Li Zishuan's uncle, Yi Huiming, carried a small bag of luggage and prepared to leave Chang and return to Nanyang. "Father, mother, take care of your health in Chang, and I'll go back first." Yi Huiming bowed and cupped his hands. Good. Huiming, you also have to be careful on the road. Take the official road don't take the small roads so as to avoid encountering bad people. The old madam of the Yi family nagged. I know. Yi Huiming responded and looked at Yi Fashion. He really didn't know what to say to this son of his who had been like a sinner since he was young. After thinking for a while, he decided not to say anything. In the end, he looked at Li Jingma and Yi Yuzhu. Yi Yuzhu quickly said, Big brother, don't worry. I will take good care of father, mother, and fashion. Yi Huiming nodded and whispered, Don't resent father for what happened in the past. He did it for your own good. Then he turned and got into the carriage at the door. With the coachman's go, the carriage gradually drove out of Yongle Lane and finally disappeared from everyone's sight. Chapter 961. Okay, Lu Meng, put your thumbprint here and you can borrow these 500 coins. Han Village, Han family's courtyard. There was a long line in the courtyard. Han Li was setting up a table in the courtyard. Beside him stood a middle-aged scholar. At this moment, Han Li was smiling as he spoke to the dark-skinned man in coarse hemp clothing. This man was the father of Liujia Village's Huzi. He was the one who came here to borrow money but forgot to bring his hen. However, even if he brought it, it would be a waste because Han Lijing would not accept it. Hey, I will press it now. Lu Meng did not look at the content of the paper. He responded and without hesitation, bit his thumb and put a red thumbprint on the paper. Han Lijing's character was well known by everyone in the surrounding area. Therefore, Lu Meng was not worried that Han Lijing would cheat him. Besides, even if he did not believe Han Lijing, how could he not believe Li Zishuan? After all, Han Lijing was helping Li Zishuan. Okay, here are 500 coins. You better count them carefully. Han Lijing nodded. He took out a string of coins from the wooden box behind him and handed it over to Lu Meng. Lu Meng took it with both hands. He wanted to count, but he was a bit embarrassed. Han Lijing saw this and laughed. Hee. It is best to count the coins face to face to avoid any misunderstandings later on. Thank you, Han Lijing. Lu Meng was moved. He moved 2 steps to the left to give way to the line. Then he stood on the side and counted the coins face to face. Han Lijing shouted. Next, a young man in his 20s came over. Han Lijing found him unfamiliar and asked, Little brother, which village are you from? Han Lijing, my name is Wang Qingyuan. I am from Shirley Village. Last month, my village was annexed to Marquis's fief. The young man quickly replied. Han Lijing looked at the middle-aged scholar beside him. He saw the scholar open the book on the table to a certain page. After looking at it for a moment, he nodded and said, There is indeed this person in Wang Village. Han Lijing nodded and asked the young man, Wang Qingyuan, how much money do you want to borrow? Why do you want to borrow money? Wang Qingyuan replied, Han Lijing, I want to borrow 500 copper coins. I also want to build a greenhouse to grow vegetables. Han Lijing nodded and took out a piece of paper with a document written on it and said, just like Lu Meng, put your fingerprint here. Hey, I understand, Wang Qingyuan said excitedly. At this time, Lu Meng, who is next to him, has already counted the copper coins. He scratched his head and somewhat embarrassedly asked Han Lijing. Han Lijing, how should we build this greenhouse? I want to learn. Holding the heavy 500 copper coins, he felt a huge pressure in his heart. If he couldn't grow vegetables, then his family would be completely finished. His son wouldn't be able to go to school, and he was afraid that even eating would be a problem. Therefore, before he set up the greenhouse, he had to learn the technique well. Otherwise, the borrowed 500 copper coins would be wasted. Yes, Han Lijing, where should we go to learn how to build a greenhouse? The other people also looked at this side. The question that Lu Meng asked was also what they wanted to ask. Those who made up their minds to borrow money actually wanted to use this opportunity to completely improve their family situation. No one didn't want to be able to grow vegetables in their greenhouse. Han Lijing raised his head and said to everyone, If you want to learn how to build a greenhouse after you get the money, I can take you to Old Hu's house to have a look. His house has already built a greenhouse. At that time, if you have anything you don't understand, be sure to ask on the spot. Old will also teach you some planting techniques. If you want to learn, you can wait for a while on the side. Lu Meng grinned and said, Hey, That's fine. I will wait for a while on the side. Thank you, Han Lijing. Yo, there's so many people. At this time, Li Zixuan came in from outside the courtyard. Looking at the long line in the courtyard, he was surprised. In the afternoon, after he sent his uncle away, he remembered the situation in the village and immediately rushed over. Things like greenhouse vegetables, for many people, were entrusted to their family's livelihood. If he didn't come personally to teach, in case something went wrong, it would be a big sin. Marquis? Marquis is here. Greetings to Marquis. Greetings to Marquis. Among the nobles of the great Tang, Li Zixuan was one of the more down-to-earth nobles. He often interacted with the people of the lower class, so there were many people who recognized Li Zixuan. The moment he entered, many people recognized him, and the people in the procession instantly grew excited and enthusiastically bowed. Li Zixuan nodded his head to greet them one by one. He walked to the front of the line. The middle-aged scholar from before hurriedly straightened his clothes and quickly came over to salute. Lowly official, Xiaohai greets Marquis. Yuan Shirkai. Li Zixuan was taken aback subconsciously. Could it be so coincidental? I actually met Yuan Datu in Tang Dynasty. The middle-aged scholar looked embarrassed and said carefully, Marquis, that lowly official is Xiaohai, not Yuan Shirkai. At this time, Han Lijing said to Wang Qingyan, who had finished pressing his fingerprint and handed over a string of copper coins. He hurriedly came over and said, Xiao Xian, this is County Deputy Yuan from the county government. I invited him here today to be a witness. It's more reliable this way. Li Zixuan suddenly understood. He had also heard that in ancient times, it was often necessary to find a well-respected middleman to act as a witness. Generally, commoners like to find a judge from the county government to act as a witness. This way, it would be easier to file a lawsuit. He had to admit that his father-in-law was very considerate. At this time, he also realized that he had misheard the name just now. He said apologetically, Oh, it's County Deputy Yuan. I didn't pay attention just now and misheard the name. I'm really sorry. County Deputy Yuan, please forgive me. Xiaohai hurriedly waved his hand and said, Marquis, you're too serious. You didn't mean it, and I didn't take it to heart. Li Zixuan nodded and smiled. That's good. Then he looked at Han Lijing and asked, Father-in-law, how many people came to borrow money? Han Lijing replied, In the morning, there were already more than 70 households coming to borrow money. Looking at the situation in the afternoon, there should be nearly 200 households coming to borrow money today. Li Zixuan was shocked. He didn't expect that there were so many farmers who couldn't afford to build greenhouses. He secretly thought that it was fortunate that his father-in-law had reminded him. Otherwise, according to the previous policy, many people would be unable to build greenhouses even if they wanted to. Well, father-in-law, have you arranged for the farmers to train them in building greenhouses and how to plant vegetables? Li Zixuan asked again. Han Lijing nodded and smiled. Yes, I have. I'll take them to Old Hu's house later. Old Hu's house has already built the greenhouses. I'll take them to the site to have a look. As for the farmers who came to collect money in the morning, I've already told them to go to Old Hu's house in the afternoon. Li Zixuan was slightly relieved. He looked at the wooden table in the courtyard and the big box containing the copper coins. He turned around and said to Pang Feiji, Feiji, go to Yanwan College now and ask Li Tai, Meng Wenhao, Iron Egg, and Kush Shurqing to come over and wait here. Yes, Marquis. Pang Feiji cupped his fists and accepted the order. He immediately turned around and left. Han Lijing didn't understand and asked. Xiao Xian. Li Zixuan said, Father-in-law, there are so many farmers. You can't handle it alone. Iron Egg and the others will come over later to help you count and distribute the money. Now, bring the farmers and follow me to Uncle Hu's house to have a look. If Uncle Hu makes any mistakes, I can point them out from his side. Han Lijing heard and felt that it was reasonable. He replied, That's good. We'll go and have a look first. As he finished speaking, he called out to the villagers, intending to follow Li Zixuan to Old Hu's residence. Beside him, Ma Yinghai suddenly didn't know what to do. Should he follow along? Li Zixuan hadn't invited him. If he didn't go, What would he do if he stayed here alone? Moreover, there was still a pile of huge money in the courtyard. If he didn't have enough money, how could he explain himself? County Deputy Yuan, if you're willing, you can come with us. Fortunately, Li Zishuan didn't forget about him. Hu Shihai hurriedly said, I'm willing. I'm willing, of course I'm willing. However, the farmers were a little unwilling. They were afraid that Hu Shihai would steal their knowledge and teach the technology of growing vegetables in the greenhouse to outsiders. However, the technology of growing vegetables in the greenhouse was Li Zishuan's. Since Li Zishuan didn't say anything, they naturally didn't have the right to say anything. They could only keep their unwillingness in their hearts. In fact, Li Zishuan wasn't worried about the technology leaking because he didn't have the intention to monopolize the business of growing vegetables in the greenhouse from the beginning. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taught the technology to the farmers. He just wanted his farmers to be the first batch of farmers to grow vegetables in the greenhouse and be the first batch to taste the sweetness of growing vegetables in the greenhouse. This technology wasn't difficult to learn. After a period of time, it was inevitable that other farmers or other dignitaries would learn it. If he didn't want to leak it, he shouldn't have made this technology public, since he planned to teach it to the farmers. It would definitely leak one day. However, the good thing was that there were basically no vegetables in the market now. The farmers under his rule could enjoy the first batch of dividends brought by growing vegetables in the greenhouse, which was also a huge profit. As more and more people grew vegetables in the greenhouse in the future, the price of vegetables in the greenhouse would correspondingly decrease. Naturally, the profit wouldn't be as big as it was now. Marquis, you're here. Under Han Lijing's guidance, Li Zishuan and his group came to a field in the south of the Han village. This field was actually beside the Han village and was very close to the village. Li Zishuan didn't expect that there would be a large group of people in the field. There were people from the Han village and Plum village. Second Master Lu was also among them. Although the old man was old, his eyes were very good. He was the first to notice Li Zishuan coming over. Second Master Lu, you're here too. Li Zishuan smiled in surprise. Hey, aren't you here to learn? Not only me, but basically every family in Plum village is here. Second Master Lu said with a smile. When Han Lijing informed the 8 villages that Li Zishuan wanted to promote Dapeng vegetables, the people from the other villages might have hesitated a little. However, the people from Plum village and the Han village basically chose to join without hesitation. This was because Li Zishuan had helped them chase away the bullies, Lu Shiren and his son. It was Li Zishuan who led them to live a prosperous life today. Li Zishuan was a god in their hearts. They believed in Li Zishuan unconditionally. These 2 villages were under Li Zishuan's management at the beginning of the year. The people in the villages were basically considered wealthy. When others were thinking about whether to build a greenhouse or where to borrow money to build a greenhouse, they had already taken action. Most of them went into the city this morning to buy the coarse cloth and tung oil. When they were free in the afternoon, they ran over to Old Hu to learn the skills. Young master, you're here. Old Hu, who was not far away, hurriedly put down his work and ran over. Uncle Hu, your shed is not bad. Li Zishuan glanced at the greenhouse in the field and smiled. Old Hu scratched his head and said, hey, it's still a little lacking compared to young master's greenhouse in the other courtyard. Li Zishuan shook his head and said, haha, it's not bad, not bad. Uncle Hu, tell them about the techniques of building a greenhouse. I'll walk around and see if there are any flaws in your greenhouse. Old Hu naturally agreed. This was something that had been agreed upon earlier. He led everyone to the side of the greenhouse and began to explain, actually, building a greenhouse is very simple. I'll explain it to you once. You'll definitely know how to do it. If you want to build a greenhouse like this, first, Old Hu led the farmers into the greenhouse and explained as they walked. Li Zishuan wandered around the outside of the greenhouse. He was checking the airtightness of the greenhouse. Suddenly, he caught a glimpse of a small patch of yellowish green in the mound not far away from the greenhouse. When he took a closer look, he found that there was a small patch of mung bean sprouts growing in the mound. Oh, to be precise, it should be called mung bean sprouts. Those that sprouted in water were called bean sprouts. Those that grew in the ground were called bean sprouts. Damn, why didn't I think of making bean sprouts? Seeing this, Li Zishuan suddenly thought of something. He could not help but pat his head and said regretfully, "Bean sprouts? Marquis, what's a bean sprouts?" Kohai, who had just walked over and wanted to talk to Li Zishuan, could not help but be stunned and asked, "Oh, nothing." Li Zishuan came back to his senses and turned to look at Kohai. He changed the topic and said, "Why didn't you go in with us, County Magistrate Yuan?" Kohai smiled bitterly and said, "This greenhouse cultivation method was created by Marquis for the farmers under his rule. As an outsider, how can I eavesdrop?" Li Zishuan looked at this person in surprise. He did not expect this county magistrate to be a gentleman. Haha, it's just a folk art. It can't be considered a secret. Since I've taken it out, I don't want to keep it a secret forever. If County Magistrate Yuan is interested, you can go in and listen. Villains were born in troubled times, while gentlemen were born in prosperous times. It had to be said that ever since Li Zishuan transmigrated to this world, he had met more good people than villains. He had a good impression of people like Ming Hai. Kahai said happily, "Marquis is so righteous. Actually, I've always been curious about how this greenhouse is used to cultivate vegetables in winter. Since Marquis has given me permission, it would be impolite of me to refuse. But don't worry, Marquis. Before I get permission from Marquis, I won't talk nonsense." Chapter 962. Li Zishuan hurriedly left after pointing out a few small mistakes in the shed that the Han family manor had built for Hu Hanyan. "Wife, do you have soybeans or mung beans at home?" Li Zishuan asked Han Yushi when he returned to his home in Chang. Yes, he wanted to get some bean sprouts to eat. Although the greenhouse vegetables could provide vegetables on a large scale during the winter, distant water could not quench the immediate thirst. At the very least, they would have to wait for close to 2 months before they could eat them. The vegetables that they ate yesterday were all taken from the Prince of Wei's residence. It was not a big deal to take it once or twice, but it would not be good if they took it too many times. The small bean sprouts in the Hu family's field in the afternoon made Li Zishuan's eyes light up. It took a long time for greenhouse vegetables to mature, but bean sprouts did not. In this season of shortage of vegetables, crisp and refreshing bean sprouts tasted much better than fish and meat. "Hubby, there should be lioli, same pronunciation as green, beans at home, but what is yellow bean?" When Han Yushi heard this, she thought for a moment and asked curiously. Mung beans and soybeans had a history of thousands of years of cultivation in China. They existed before the Western Zhou Dynasty. The ancients called mung beans. Although they had different characters, they had the same sound. Therefore, when Li Zishuan said mung beans, Han Yushi could understand what he meant. But soybeans were different. At this time, there was no such thing as soybeans. Later generations generally believe that the word soybeans first appeared in the Tang Dynasty's Kaiyuan Zhanjing. The book was written between 718 and 726, and Yuyang Zazu. Before that, they all used the word soybeans. There is also an interesting story about soybeans. During the reign of Emperor Wenzong of the Tang Dynasty, a strange thing happened in the capital Chang. The price of soybeans, which were originally an agricultural product, soared overnight. 1 stone of soybeans was sold for 10 taels of gold. It was said that Emperor Wenzong loved women with big breasts. There was a palace maid surnamed Wang who became a phoenix just because one of her breasts was unusually prominent. She was promoted to Jiaoyi and became the favorite of Emperor Wenzong. With this successful precedent, the imperial concubines in the harem began to buy and store soybeans in large quantities. They would eat them every meal. According to the theory of traditional Chinese medicine, soybeans had a certain breast enlargement effect. With the help of the imperial concubines, the price of beans in Chang and rose faster than the price of houses in modern times. "Oh, it's soybeans. Wife, do we have soybeans at home?" Li Zishuan patted his head, recalled the memories of the previous owner of this body, and quickly corrected himself. Yes, there was. "What do you want to do with soybeans and black beans?" Han Yushi replied. Li Zishuan chuckled and said, "Hey, wife, you'll know when the time comes." After saying that, he rushed to the kitchen excitedly and asked for a ladle of green beans and a ladle of soybeans from the cook, Annie Zhao. He then soaked the two types of beans in clear water. In his previous life, Li Zishuan's grandmother often made bean sprouts, so he was quite familiar with the steps of making bean sprouts. Soaking the beans in water was only the first step. According to his grandmother's experience, the beans had to be soaked for at least 8 hours before the next step could be done. "Husband, why are you soaking the beans? Could it be that you want to grind tofu?" Han Yushi followed in and couldn't help but ask after seeing what Li Zishuan was doing. Li Zishuan heard and turned around. He looked at Han Yushi's chest and said with a naughty smile, "Husband, I only know how to take advantage of tofu. I don't know how to make tofu." "Husband, what are you talking about? Auntie Zhao is still here." Han Yushi's cheeks blushed, and she said angrily. Although she didn't understand what taking advantage of tofu meant, she guessed the general meaning when she saw the naughty smile on Li Zishuan's face. She secretly thought that her husband sometimes looked like a gentleman, but sometimes he was perverted and naughty. He was really special. Annie Zhao, who was outside the door, quickly coughed and walked away. Li Zishuan saw Han Yushi's shy face and couldn't bear to tease her anymore. He went back to the topic and said, "I soaked the beans to let them sprout. Although we have 2 greenhouses to grow vegetables, it will take at least 2 months to eat the vegetables inside. After the beans sprout, take the sprouts and stir-fry them in the pot. It can be considered a delicious dish. Before the vegetables in the greenhouses come out, this dish is a very good substitute." Han Yushi was obviously not the kind of young lady who didn't eat food and didn't know about farming. She frowned and said, "Husband, these beans have been soaked in water. I'm afraid they won't sprout. Instead, they will become smelly." Li Zishuan said with a smile, "Of course, I won't let them soak in water all the time. There are still many steps later. When tomorrow morning comes, I will take out the beans and put them in a bamboo sieve covered with wet gauze. The bamboo sieve will then be placed in a basin filled with water. The basin shouldn't be too big. It will be enough for the beans to breathe. Another wet gauze needs to be covered on top of the bamboo sieve. Finally, a slightly heavier bowl needs to be pressed on top. The weight of the bowl can make the bean sprouts thicker. After that, the beans have to be drenched 3 to 6 times every day to maintain the moisture of the beans. After the drenching, you have to continue covering them with wet gauze. By the 5th day, the bean sprouts at the corners will have grown out. Moreover, they will have roots. Then they can be eaten." Han Yushi listened attentively. In the end, she asked, "Husband, how do you know so much? Have you made them yourself before?" It was mainly because Li Zishuan said it in such a serious manner that she couldn't help but wonder if Li Zishuan had made bean sprouts before. That was why he was so surprised. Li Zishuan touched his nose. Although he hadn't made them himself, he had seen his grandmother make them many times. "Cough, cough. You can say that." Li Zishuan coughed dryly and said vaguely, "In short, wife, you will be able to see what these bean sprouts look like in 5 days. Moreover, you will be able to taste this delicacy." Han Yushi put her hand into the water basin and gently stroked the soybeans in the basin. She raised her head and said, "Husband, the farmstead and Yanhuang College need you. You still have a lot of things to do. Leave this matter to me. I have remembered all the steps you mentioned earlier. Since it's not a troublesome matter, I will definitely do it for you." Li Zishuan thought for a moment and nodded. "That's good. Thank you for your trouble, wife." He was very confident in his wife's ability to do things. In some matters, Han Yushi's attentiveness even made him feel inferior. The wife he married seemed simple, but in fact, she wasn't. "Husband, Father already knows that you want to promote greenhouse vegetables in the farmstead. He said that since you are confident that you can cultivate vegetables in winter using this method, then use this to make our other 6 farmsteads rich in one fell swoop. However, Father said that there is one thing that you might have overlooked. He asked me to remind you." Han Yushi took her hand out of the water basin and suddenly said to Li Zishuan seriously, Chapter 963. Wifey, what did father say? After listening to his wife's serious words, Lisa Schwan asked aloud. Han Yushi pursed her lips and said softly, Husband, in the afternoon, father asked me to tell you that letting the people grow vegetables in greenhouses is a good deed, but you have to consider things more thoroughly. For example, the oilcloth needed to build greenhouses. Husband, there are thousands of people in your fief. Even if only 50% of the people are willing to build greenhouses and grow vegetables, the amount of coarse cloth needed will be quite large. When the time comes, the unscrupulous cloth merchants in Chang will see a business opportunity and will definitely wait for the opportunity to raise prices. Although husband has given the people an interest-free loan of 500 copper coins per household, who knows how much the coarse cloth will cost? Maybe 500 copper coins won't even be enough to build a greenhouse. With Han Yushi's explanation and analysis, Li Zixuan's brows gradually wrinkled. Han Yushi saw this and said, But husband, you don't have to worry. Father has already informed shopkeeper son of our family's ready-made clothing store to prepare a supply of coarse cloth in case of an emergency. Presumably, it will alleviate the situation of the shortage of coarse cloth in Chang'an. Li Zixuan couldn't help but sigh. Father has considered everything thoroughly. I almost neglected this matter. Previously, when we lent money to the farmers, it wasn't just for them to buy greenhouses, but also for the seeds. If the price of cloth in Chang and soars, even if the people have enough money, they may not be able to afford the seeds. Han Yushi saw that Li Zixuan's face revealed some disappointment and hurriedly comforted him. Husband, this is your first time doing this kind of thing. How can you be so considerate? Even a wise man will make a mistake once in a while. Li Zixuan heard this and laughed. Hee, wifey, you don't have to comfort me. I'm not that weak. Actually, with shopkeeper son's connections, he may not be able to gather so much coarse cloth in such a short time. If we want to solve this matter quickly, we have to rely on the Chamber of Commerce. Wifey, you go ahead with your work. I'll go arrange it. Husband, go ahead with your work. Li Zixuan went to the front yard and found Wang Zhong. He asked him to send someone to invite someone over. About an hour later, when the sun was about to set, an old man in luxurious clothes came to the Li residence. San Bao, who had been waiting at the entrance, quickly went up to welcome him. Boss Chow, my family's marquis is waiting for you in the front hall. That's right, this well-dressed old man was Chow Wendong, the largest silk and cloth merchant in Chang'an City. He was also the third largest shareholder of Yanhuang Chamber of Commerce. Please lead the way. Chow Wendong politely cupped his hands and said. Under San Bao's lead, Chow Wendong came to the front hall of the Li residence. When he saw Li Zixuan sitting at the head of the table, he quickly cupped his hands and greeted, Greetings, Marquis. Li Zixuan waved his hand and said, No need to be so courteous. Then, without even exchanging pleasantries, he went straight to the point. Mr. Chow, I'm looking for you today because I need your help with something. I hope I'm not bothering you. Chow Wendong shook his head. No. I don't have anything to do at home. How am I bothering you? Marquis, if you need anything, feel free to tell me. Chow Wendong was so polite that Li Zixuan felt a little embarrassed to come. Whenever he needed help with something, he would drag him out. If he didn't need help, he would put him aside. No matter how he looked at it, it was a little unkind. Actually, he was thinking too much. His thinking was still stuck in the ways of the modern world, but he forgot that he was in the ancient times. In this era of scholars, farmers, businessmen, and businessmen, there was a strict hierarchy. If he didn't do this, Chow Wendong would find it strange. It's like this. Recently, the people of the Marquis Manor want to buy a large batch of coarse cloth. The amount is huge, but the people have limited money. Therefore, I intend to ask Mr. Chow to help me transport a batch of coarse cloth from other places to prevent the other cloth merchants in Chang and City from increasing their prices. Li Zixuan asked someone to pour a cup of tea for Chow Wendong and said. Hearing this, Chow Wendong felt strange at his heart. Why did the farmers of Li Zixuan's manor need a large amount of coarse cloth? However, he didn't ask the question in his heart. After experiencing all kinds of ways of the world, he knew that there were some things that he shouldn't ask. Marquis, how much coarse cloth do you need me to prepare? Chow Wendong pondered for a moment and asked. Li Zishuan calculated a little in his heart and stretched out 5 fingers. 50,000 bolts. And all of them are white cloth. If they can't be sold out, I'm willing to buy them all at the market price. If each of the farmers under him was willing to build a greenhouse, he would need at least 100,000 bolts of coarse cloth. Moreover, this didn't take into account the situation like Old Hu's family who had built multiple greenhouses. The reason why he only asked Chow Wendong to prepare 50,000 bolts was mainly because he considered that not all of the 8 farms would be willing to build greenhouses. Moreover, in the existing stock market in Chang'an City, there was a considerable amount of coarse cloth in stock. If Chow Wendong prepared 50,000 bolts, it would be enough to control the price of coarse cloth in Chang'an City. Chow Wendong was secretly shocked. He didn't expect Li Zishuan to ask for so much cloth. He would be lying if he said that he wasn't curious. However, this kind of question, if Li Zishuan didn't take the initiative to ask, he wouldn't and couldn't take the initiative to ask. Marquis, don't worry. I can definitely gather 50,000 bolts of coarse cloth within a day. If I can't sell them in a short time, I don't need Marquis to buy them. I naturally have my own channels to sell them to other provinces and counties. Chow Wendong said with a confident smile. The reason why he could become the largest cloth merchant in Chang'an City was because of his extensive and high-quality supply channels. Li Zishuan's request might be a little difficult for others, but for him, it wasn't difficult at all. He only needed to move his mouth. Okay, then I won't force you. Thank you, Boss Chow. Li Zishuan stood up and cupped his hands. Chow Wendong quickly stood up and said, You flatter me. If there's nothing else, Marquis, I'll go back and make arrangements. Li Zishuan nodded and said, Take care, Boss Chow. The next day, the cloth merchants in Chang'an City welcomed a large number of special customers. The reason why it was special was that these people only came to buy 2 bolts of coarse cloth near the new year. However, there was still more than a month before the new year, and these people came in groups. Not only did they come, but they also bought cloth by cart. The craziness of this made many cloth merchants secretly speechless. When these people were asked why they bought so much coarse cloth, most of them were vague or gave very strange reasons. It was obvious that they were deliberately deceiving people. This strange phenomenon made the merchants very puzzled. Some cloth merchants saw a business opportunity. On one hand, they slightly raised the price. On the other hand, they urgently mobilized coarse cloth from other places. Although coarse cloth was less profitable than silk and fine silk, it couldn't be relied on the large quantity. An undercurrent of price increase was rapidly brewing. Chapter 964. Shopkeeper, do you have any more coarse cloth? Do you want white cloth? No more. No more. Just now. 3 people came and bought all of it. Do you want black cloth? I still have some black cloth here. No need. I'll ask the other shops. Shopkeeper, do you still have white coarse cloth here? Yes. That's great. Shopkeeper, give me 150 bolts of white cloth. Haha. Brother, white cloth is now 2 copper coins for a bolt. Do you really want 150 bolts? Wasn't it 3 copper coins for 2 bolts before? Haha. Brother, you said that was before. Now, the price of cloth in Chang'an changes every day. If you don't buy today, it might be even more expensive tomorrow. But shopkeeper, this is too expensive. A bolt of fine silk is only 3 copper coins. How can your coarse cloth be sold for 2 copper coins? Hey. Brother, what you said is wrong. Now, fine silk is 4 copper coins for a bolt. Silk is 6 copper coins for a bolt. I'm not cheating you. In the eastern and western districts of Chang'an, and similar conversations like this could be found everywhere. Farmers from several villages in Lantian County were all asking for white coarse cloth. Many cloth merchants were waiting for the opportunity to raise the price. The farmers were caught in a dilemma. If they buy 100 bolts of cloth, will be 50 copper coins more than before. This was not a small amount. If they don't buy, what if the price continues to rise tomorrow? Meng, The white cloth from Li Ji Garment Shop in the Western District is still 3 copper coins for 2 bolts. Go buy it quickly. If you're late, it might be gone. In the Eastern District, an old man was walking quickly toward the entrance of the Eastern District. He saw Lu Meng on the side of the road and quickly shouted, "Third Master, which Li Ji Garment Shop is it?" Lu Meng's face lit up as he turned his head and asked. The old man grinned and said, "You child, which Li Ji Garment Shop can it be?" "Of course it's Marquis Shop. Go quickly. I heard it from Wang Dehai from the neighboring Wang family village. If you're late, it might be gone." "Hey, thank you, Third Master. I'll go with you." Lu Meng agreed and then left with the old man without any hesitation, leaving the cloth shop owner with an ugly face. "Shopkeeper, should we reduce the price of our cloth?" When the shop assistant saw the ugly expression on his boss's face, he carefully probed. "What surrender? Don't you see that there are so many commoners who need cloth today? Even if Li Ji Clothing Shop is backed by the Marquis of Yong, and this old man doesn't believe that they can supply so much cloth. When these people can't buy cloth from them, they will definitely come back to us to buy. What are you afraid of?" The cloth merchant thought for a moment and scolded with a cold face. The shop assistant shrank back and hurriedly flattered, "Yes, yes, yes. Shopkeeper has great foresight. You are truly wise." The cloth merchant frowned and ordered, "Go and find out why these farmers suddenly need so much cloth. This old man will have someone transport a batch of coarse cloth from Fuzhou." "Yes, shopkeeper." "Young master, the price of cloth in Chong and is rising. Right now, only our shop and Chow family shop have not increased their prices. After the commoners heard the news, they will flock here. I reckon that our stock won't last until today." Yong Lane, Li Mansion. Housekeeper Wang Zhong walked in from outside and reported to Li Zixuan. Before Li Zixuan could speak, Yi Fashion furrowed his brows and angrily said, "Preposterous. Cousin, these profiteers are hoarding and driving up the prices. Cloth is a necessity for the commoners. How can they be allowed to run amok? These people are guilty and should be punished." Yi Guozhong also worriedly said, "Little Xian, if this happens, the farmers in your fief will have to pay a higher price if they want to continue building greenhouses." Li Jingma frowned and didn't say anything. Yesterday, he did ask Sun Huaiming of the clothing shop to prepare a batch of coarse cloth in advance. However, the time was too short and the commoners' demand was too large. Even if they prepared in advance, it would be difficult to supply all of it. Li Zixuan smiled confidently and said, "It's not the end yet. The outcome hasn't been decided yet. Those cloth merchants who see an opportunity to increase their prices will soon suffer the consequences of their own actions." After that, he looked at Yi Fashion and said, "Fashion, the world is full of people. Everyone is here for profit. I am not surprised that the cloth merchants have such a reaction. When the higher-ups encounter such a situation, they must not use brute force. They must use profit to balance the situation. Only then will they be able to make those people pay the price and accept it wholeheartedly." Yi Fashion's eyes lit up and asked, "Cousin, do you have another trick up your sleeve?" Li Zixuan smiled slightly. He didn't deny or admit it. "Ha, little Xian, it seems that you are prepared. Then I won't worry for nothing. I heard that Fashion recently met a Taoist priest from the Taisha Bureau. He is quite skilled in Taoism. I will go and meet him later." Yi Guozhong stood up and laughed when he saw this. The price increase of the coarse cloth in Chong and city had awakened the villagers who were still hesitating about whether or not to take the risk of building greenhouses. In this situation, if they continued to hesitate and miss the opportunity, there would be no medicine for regret. Therefore, the number of villagers who went to the Han family village to borrow money suddenly increased. The number of villagers who went to the Han family village to borrow money suddenly increased from 200 to 600. The queue stretched from the Han family village's courtyard to the entrance of the village. With so many people flocking to the village, the Han family village suddenly became very crowded. Of course, when they saw the new houses that the Han Manor's commoners lived in, the new clothes that the Han Manor's children wore, and the extravagant village school, The commoners from other villages who came to borrow money were all the more determined to follow Lisa Schwan and grow vegetables in greenhouses. Only by following Lisa Schwan would they have the chance to live as blissful a life as the Han Manor's residents. Faced with so many villagers who came to borrow money, Han Lijing suddenly felt that Alexandria was too big. He knew that he could not solve this problem alone. Moreover, there was no one in the village who knew how to keep accounts. He could only ask for help from Yanwang College. Fortunately, Mr. Li Gang was very open-minded. He also agreed with Li Zishuan's teaching philosophy of combining knowledge and practice. Therefore, when he heard that Han Lijing had sent people to the college to ask for help, he immediately informed the head of the mathematics department, Su Hongji, to send 10 students with excellent results to the Han family village to help. Su Hongji had recently heard that Li Zishuan wanted to encourage the villagers to grow dapeng vegetables. This kind of good deed that would benefit the people, he naturally raised both hands in approval. Thus, the top 10 students in the entrance exam were sent to the Han village. Han Lijing immediately heaved a sigh of relief. The burden on his body suddenly became lighter. However, when he heard that the price of cloth in Chang and had skyrocketed, he suddenly became worried again. Chapter 965. Your Majesty, the price of cloth in Chang and has suddenly changed today. Coarse cloth, fine silk, and silk have all increased by varying degrees. In the sweet nectar hall, Zhao Song quietly walked in and spoke respectfully to Lier. Lier frowned and said with displeasure, Have you found out who is hoarding and driving up the price of cloth? In this era, the rulers of the upper class did not have much financial awareness. Naturally, there was no such thing as excessive currency devaluation and price inflation. Under normal circumstances, only in times of chaos would prices go out of control. When Li Yuan was in power, he did not lack in controlling the price of goods in the country. Because stable prices were often a symbol of a country's peace and stability, the price of goods in the beginning of the Tang Dynasty was relatively low. How could Lier not understand this? He was also very concerned about the price of goods in the country, especially in Chang. So when he heard about the price change in Chang and city, his brows immediately furrowed. Zhao Song bowed and said, Your Majesty, this is not a hoarding of goods by some merchants. Almost all the cloth merchants in Chang and city are raising prices at the same time. Yesterday and today, the farmers in the villages outside the city have all entered the city and bought large quantities of coarse cloth. The amount is so large that it makes one speechless. Many of the cloth shops have been swept clean. When the cloth merchants saw this, they collectively raised the price. However, the clothing shop of the Marquis of Yong and the cloth shop of the #1 cloth merchant in Chang and city, Chow family, did not raise the price. There is such a strange thing. Why would the people buy cloth in large quantities? Li Zishuan, Chow family? Lier was puzzled. He stood up and paced back and forth with his hands behind his back. Suddenly, he said, Li Zishuan and the Chow family formed a Yanhuang Chamber of Commerce a few months ago, right? Zhao Song lowered his head and replied, Yes, Your Majesty. Lier seemed to understand and muttered, So, the reason why the Chow family did not raise the price of cloth should be because they were instructed by Li Zishuan? What is this kid doing? Why do I feel like he predicted that the price of cloth in Chang and city would soar? This matter must have something to do with him. Zhao Song's eyelids twitched. Then, like an old monk in meditation, he remained silent. After a long while, Li Er ordered, Investigate why these farmers suddenly bought so much cloth. At the same time, order Lu Dui, the Chancellor of the Supreme Court, to investigate the peddlers in Chang and city who have been maliciously raising the price of cloth. This old servant obeys. Zhao Song cupped his fists and left. There was no shortage of well-informed people in Chang, and especially for the bigwigs in the imperial court. There were few secrets in Chang, and that they did not know. Today, when the price of cloth in the city skyrocketed, they all received the news one after another. Some even knew that the bulk buyers came from Lantian County, Li Zishuan's fief, Combined with the fact that only Li Zishuan's and Chao Wendong shops in Chang and City did not raise the price of the cloth, the answer behind the incident was obvious. However, the truth of the matter was really puzzling. What was Li Zishuan trying to do? Why did he instigate the farmers to buy cloth in large quantities? What would be the use of the cloth he had bought? The bigwigs in the imperial court could not figure it out. It was not their fault that they were not well informed. It was just that the farmers were unusually tight-lipped. The cloth merchants had asked, the servants sent by the courtiers had asked, and the farmers of other farms had asked as well. However, they could not get anything out of them. Li Zishuan's seemingly simple decision had affected the nerves of many people. The main reason was that Li Zishuan's performance in Chang and City over the past 6 months had been too outstanding. Now, any news about him would attract a lot of attention. Xiao Xian, I heard that the farmers of your farm are all buying cloth everywhere. Are you up to something mysterious recently? When it was close to evening, Cheng Yaojin came to Li Zishuan's residence to find him. This old fellow did not beat around the bush. After taking a seat in the main hall of the Li residence, he asked directly. Li Zishuan's brows furrowed almost imperceptibly. He already knew that the farmers had collectively kept the matter of the greenhouse vegetables a secret. Regarding the farmers' thoughts, he naturally understood. Moreover, he also hoped that his family's farmers would be among the first to enjoy the benefits of the greenhouse vegetables. However, the relationship between the Li family and the Cheng family was not shallow. It could be said that the benefits that the Cheng family's farmstead enjoyed were basically implemented by Cheng Yaojin imitating Li Zishuan's policies towards the farmers. Now that Cheng Yaojin had personally come to ask about the sudden purchase of cloth, Li Zishuan was somewhat embarrassed. Should he say it or not? For himself, it did not matter whether he said it or not. However, for the farmers of his family, it was different. The market in Chang and City was not small, but it was not big either. If more people were to share the market, Li Zishuan's farmers would naturally receive less profit. Uncle Cheng, to be honest, I have a method of growing vegetables in winter. It requires a lot of oilcloth. I have already passed this method to the farmers of my fief. That's why they have been wantonly buying cloth in Chang and City these 2 days. After weighing the pros and cons for a moment, Li Zishuan decided to tell the truth. He believed that Cheng Yaojin knew his limits. At the very least, he would give the farmers some methods to make money. How could there be enough money in this world? Even if the farmers of the Cheng family's fief started to build greenhouses, Li Zishuan felt that his own family's profits would definitely not be low. What? You can grow vegetables in winter? Xiao Xian, did I hear wrongly? Cheng Yaojin's first reaction was shock. His eyes were as big as copper bells, and his face was filled with disbelief. Li Zishuan nodded and said, Yes, Uncle Cheng, you didn't hear wrongly. Let me bring you to see something. Cheng Yaojin did not understand, but he still followed Li Zishuan to the west courtyard. Seeing the greenhouses in the west courtyard that were half the height of a person, and with Li Zishuan's explanation, Cheng Yaojin finally accepted the reality of the greenhouses. If your greenhouses can really grow vegetables in winter, then the farmers of your fief will make a lot of money this year. Lantian County will probably become one of the top 3 counties in Chang and City. Ha! You little brat. You really treat your family's farmers well. Cheng Yaojin stroked his beard and praised. Li Zishuan smiled and said non-committally, Perhaps. Cheng Yaojin rubbed his chin and thought for a moment before saying, Forget it, forget it. I shouldn't have come today. This was supposed to be a benefit for your farmers, but I found out about it. I shouldn't have. Don't worry, I will pretend that I didn't hear anything today. Old Cheng was not stupid. He knew when to advance and when to retreat. Although he was jealous of the huge profits from the greenhouses, he would not take advantage of his own family. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.